Chapter 1935. In the beginning, when half of Orpheus' power was taken away by the heroes and sent back to the disaster squad, Noah did want to take back the power and return it to Orpheus. It had been mentioned several times before that although only half of Orpheus' power was taken away, it made Orpheus infinite become limited. In terms of strength, it was not as simple as being reduced by half. But even so, Orpheus, whose strength had been greatly reduced, still had the strength to surpass the top 10 experts in the world. His strength had exceeded 4 digits, and he was in an ambiguous position between 3 and 4 digits. He was far from what the other Asuras, gods, and Buddhas, who were only in the 4 digits, could compare to. It was conceivable that if half of the power was taken back and the limited returned to unlimited, what kind of state would Orpheus' original power return to? To be fair, if Noah lost half of his power, he would want to take it back no matter what. Due to this mentality, Noah wanted to help Orpheus regain the lost power at the beginning. On the contrary, Orpheus did not care about this at all. Aster and Athena naturally knew Noah's thoughts. So, after Noah brought Lilith back, Aster asked Noah if he planned to reunite Orpheus and Lilith. However, that was equivalent to erasing Lilith's existence. Although they did not spend much time together, Noah could not do that kind of thing. Lilith was no longer an individual who simply had half of Orpheus' power, but another Orpheus was born from that half of power. Swordsmanship did not erase Lilith's emotions and allowed Lilith to retain the mind of a 4- or 5-year-old child. Perhaps he thought that compared to an emotionless puppet, a child like Lilith was easier to control? In short, in this way, Noah had no reason to erase Lilith. And Orpheus didn't seem to care about this. Instead, he acknowledged Lilith's existence and accepted her as a sister, which couldn't be better. Don't think that Orpheus did not have his own thoughts just because he stayed there quietly all day. Orpheus was actually very afraid of loneliness. Back then, the reason why Wally had brought Orpheus out of calamity was because Orpheus seemed to be very lonely. Noah had also asked Orpheus what he was doing when he was in the disaster group. At that time, Orpheus had answered Noah in this way. Sit in a chair, stay in the room, say your wish, and give them a snake. That was all. In the disaster squad, Orpheus' life was just like that. It was more like being used as a machine than a human's life. Noah, who now had some understanding of Orpheus and knew how innocent, naive, and afraid of loneliness Orpheus was, couldn't imagine how lonely Orpheus was back then. Therefore, Noah had to admit that it was the first time he had the urge to annihilate the entire disaster syndicate. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't know the location of the disaster squad's headquarters at that time, Noah would have definitely taken action. However, later on, Orpheus had added another sentence. Wally, he talked to me. Even that battle maniac couldn't stand it and took the initiative to chat with Orpheus? Sure enough, even if he joined the disaster syndicate for the sake of battle, he still couldn't be bad after being raised by Azazel. However, talking to a child was already Wally's limit. It would be too difficult for him to give a child a happy life. In the end, Wally brought Orpheus out of calamity and brought him to Noah's side, right? In Wally's eyes, although you were a strong enemy that he had to overcome, it was also because of this that his recognition of you was higher than anyone else, right? That was what Azazel had said when he found out that Orpheus was brought out of calamity by Wally and brought to Noah's side. In addition, you also took good care of the Jumanli and Sidi families who were students. Obviously, you were very good at taking care of people. At that time, Orpheus was also very interested in you. So Wally chose to bring Orpheus to your side and let you take care of him. Wally should believe in you, Azazel said to Noah with certainty. He believes that you can take good care of Orpheus and give Orpheus the life he wants. For this reason, Wally was regarded as a traitor by the disaster syndicate and went against them. When he found out about this, Azazel's face was full of pride. He almost directly said, "How can he be a bad guy when he was brought up by me?" At that time, Noah really wanted to say to Azazel, "You are the governor of the fallen angels, the leader of the bad guys." In the end, in order to save Azazel some face, Noah didn't say it out loud. But from this, it could be seen how Orpheus was living in the disaster syndicate. Even Wally, the battle maniac, couldn't stand it and brought Orpheus out, resolutely betraying the disaster syndicate. One could imagine how lonely Orpheus was in the disaster syndicate. Now, living with Noah, Orpheus didn't look like anything on the surface, but she was actually very satisfied in her heart, right? Because of this, Orpheus didn't care about losing half of her power at all. She even directly gave up on the idea of defeating the real Red Dragon Emperor, and gave up on her previous dreams. I don't want to go back to the dimensional gap. At that time, Orpheus said this to Noah. I want to be with Noah. Yes. To Orpheus, Noah's home was her home. Her home was no longer the dimensional gap that had nothing in the past. Under such circumstances, Orpheus welcomed another sister. She must be more satisfied in her heart, right? Therefore, Noah also gave up his previous plan. Orpheus and Lilith, both of them were indispensable. Even if they couldn't return to infinite, even if they were no longer invincible, it didn't matter. Because no matter what kind of enemy appeared, these two children would be under his protection. That was enough. Just like this, Lilith also moved into Noah's apartment and lived with Orpheus and Noah. What was worth mentioning was that Aster and Athena no longer transformed into weapons like in the past. Instead, they came out to live with Orpheus and Lilith. This caused a very serious problem. Noah's apartment was too small. Even if other than Noah the other four were all children, at least they looked like children, but in fact other than Lilith who was just born not long ago, the other three had lived for God knows how long. For children and an adult were crowded enough. Therefore a situation inevitably occurred. Should this be considered a benefit? Noah, who had just woken up in the morning, laid on the bed and looked at his surroundings, extremely speechless. He saw that Noah's bed was already crowded with people. Orpheus was lying on the left. Lilith was lying on the right. Aster was lying on the other side. And Noah was lying in the middle. His arms were tightly hugged by Orpheus and Lilith, while his neck was tightly hugged by Aster. That's fine. Noah couldn't help but complain. Sleeping is fine, but all of them are only wearing knee socks. What are they playing at? That's right. Not only Aster, but even Orpheus and Lilith were wearing knee socks. Except for knee socks, everything else was taken off. It was simply Aster's X3 state. Have they been led astray by Aster? Noah thought helplessly. Orpheus and Lilith were simply too pure and innocent, so they would learn everything. Not to mention Lilith, Orpheus often learned from Noah, and even learned from the behavior of the Jumanli's dependents. He seemed to be enjoying it. He probably learned this from Aster too, right? Of all things to learn, you have to learn this? Noah sighed. Noah gently broke away from Orpheus and Lilith's hugs, carried Aster in his arms, and carefully got up. At this moment, Noah noticed something strange. Looking at his arms that were tightly hugged by Orpheus and Lilith, Noah was startled at first, but soon after, he stood up in surprise. What is this? Chapter 1936. The morning sun shone in through the window and onto the bed in the room. The warm feeling made both Orpheus and Lilith look comfortable, and they hugged Noah even tighter. However, Noah's attention was no longer on Orpheus and Lilith, but on his own hands. Wisps of spiritual energy that were as faint as smoke drifted out of the bodies of the two dragon god girls, circled around them, and gradually entered Noah's body. As the wisps of spiritual energy entered, Noah could clearly feel it. He could feel the connection between Orpheus and Lilith. It was as if an invisible bridge had suddenly been built between Noah, Orpheus, and Lilith. Relying on this bridge, Noah could actually feel the hearts of Orpheus and Lilith. This moment Noah had a feeling. It was a feeling that he had grasped everything about Orpheus and Lilith. That feeling was as if it was telling Noah, no matter what Noah planned to let Orpheus and Lilith do, the two dragon god girls would no longer be able to resist, and would absolutely obey his orders. Noah was at a loss. What's going on? While Noah was at a loss, a voice suddenly sounded. Seems like you've picked up a huge bargain. The sudden voice made Noah react, and he turned his head and looked to the side. There Athena sat up, looking as if she had just woken up, but her beautiful snake eyes were staring at the spiritual energy surrounding Noah's arm. Athena immediately said, "That's a contract." Contract? Noah was completely stunned. Of course, Noah was no stranger to contracts. Putting everything else aside, Aster and Athena were Noah's contracted elves. Letitia and Pest, who were still helping Noah solve his problems in the box garden world, were also contracted by Noah. The famous heroic spirit Medusa of the Type Moon world was also Noah's follower, and she still maintained a contract with Noah. So, How could Noah be unfamiliar with such a thing as a contract? But why did Orpheus and Lilith suddenly contract with him? Orpheus and Lilith probably didn't realize that they had formed a contract with you, right? Athena pondered for a while and gave this answer. These two children probably didn't want to leave you subconsciously and hoped to be with you forever, so they unconsciously formed a contract with you. Unconsciously. Noah felt the connection with Orpheus and Lilith in his body, and he was somewhat in disbelief. Are you for real? It was not that Noah was making a fuss about nothing, but until now, Noah had never encountered a contract that was formed without his consent and without him even noticing. Although Noah had many contracted partners, and all of them had great backgrounds, this was only because of Noah's luck. It was not a simple matter for others to form a contract with someone. Indeed, many people knew the skills to enslave their contracted partners. For example, in this world there were many summoning magic, and even summoning magic that could summon all kinds of monsters and people. But summoning was one thing and being able to enslave was another. Generally speaking, the more advanced the summoner's skills and methods were, the easier it would be to enslave the summoned creature. However, if a contract was formed, it was another matter. For example, Noah had met the summoner of the devil star spirit in the box garden, Luce. That guy's target of enslavement was much stronger than him. The star spirit of the demon star Algor. That was an existence that even white Wuxia could not help but praise. As the strongest species of the boxers, it should have at least 3 digits of strength. However, because it had formed a contract with that good-for-nothing Luos, its strength had been greatly reduced. Not only was it dragged down to 5 digits, but even so, Luos had also imposed many restrictions on it in order to make it easier for it to be controlled, causing its strength to decrease by quite a bit. It was simply a reckless waste of a heavenly treasure. Therefore, the contract itself was a very important matter. Whether it could succeed, what kind of situation it would lead to after it succeeded, what would happen during the process of forming the contract, and so on were all uncertain. In the box garden, one could still use the outcome of the bestowment game to force a contract, but in other worlds, without the coercion of the bestowment game, who would be willing to form a contract with a good-for-nothing? Even if it was not a good-for-nothing, who would be willing to form a contract with someone who was much weaker than them and work for them? Just like in the world of the shaped moon, most of the heroic spirits who had transformed into servants were very difficult to control because of this. For this reason, a command spell that could forcefully carry out a command once became very precious. Of course, apart from coercion, there were also examples of powerful contract targets who had formed contracts with existences who were much weaker than them. However, that was generally a contract of equivalent exchange, not a servant contract. When some of the contract targets hoped to get something from the contractor, they would also form an equal contract and perform paid services. In exchange for what they wanted, they would provide power to the contractor. Under such circumstances, logically speaking, if Orpheus and Lilith, who were both the most powerful dragons and the most powerful deities, wanted to form a contract with them, it would be a matter of whether they could succeed or not. However, Noah was completely unaware that Orpheus and Lilith had formed a contract unconsciously. This only proves one thing, said Athena. The contract that Orpheus and Lilith have formed with you is a servant contract. They won't charge you any price and will obey your orders. This kind of benefit that comes directly to your door can naturally be carried out spontaneously without the consent of the other party at all. Thugs that came to his door for free and would obey his orders obediently. Who wouldn't want such a good thing? Not to mention, Orpheus and Lilith were not ordinary thugs, but between 3 and 4 digits. If the two were combined, they could even become an infinite dragon god, an existence that could reach 3 digits. Such existences obeying orders without complaint was simply a pie that fell from the sky. And it was a huge pie. This kind of servant contract that did not have any disadvantages for the contractor could only be concluded by the party who was willing to be the servant. According to Athena, Orpheus and Lilith subconsciously did not want to leave Noah and wanted to be with him all the time. Therefore, they voluntarily formed this kind of contract and unknowingly became contract partners who would obey Noah's orders. In this way, unless Noah took the initiative to sever the contract or died, even Orpheus and Lilith would not be able to sever the contract. This kind of contract is even more restrictive than the one you had with the Holy Sword Spirit. It is comparable to the contract you made in the box, or even the one you had with me. Athena's seductive eyes turned to Noah. Although her tone was indifferent, there was a hint of emotion in it. As expected of the man who is favored by all the worlds. Has even God finally been attracted to you? After Aster, Athena, Letitia, Pest, and Medusa, Orpheus and Lilith had also become contract partners of Noah. In response, Noah could only bitterly laugh. He stretched out his hand and stroked Orpheus and Lilith's heads lovingly while smiling at Athena. If it was only about attracting God, I would have attracted a certain goddess a long time ago, right? Athena raised her brows and looked at Noah's thought-provoking gaze. The corners of her mouth slowly curled up. That's why I said you are a man who is favored by the world, a lucky guy. After saying this, Athena turned into a burst of light particles and disappeared. Ugh! Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith continued to turn over and firmly stuck to Noah's body. Their exquisite faces that were usually expressionless were now filled with comfort and serenity. Noah could only smile helplessly, but did not get up again. He stroked the heads of the three petite girls in his arms and sat there quietly, waiting for them to wake up. I'll let these three girls continue sleeping for the time being. Just like that, the spiritual energy drifting from Orpheus and Lilith continued to enter Noah's body and did not subside for a long time. Chapter 1937. Concluded a contract with Orpheus and Lilith? In the reception room of an office building in Lilith, the capital of the underworld's demon king's territory, Asashel was completely speechless as he listened to the news that Noah had just brought. Concluded a contract with the infinite dragon god? Had this kind of thing happened before? No, right? Not to mention the almost invincible infinite dragon god. Even those miscellaneous gods and other mythical forces did not have many who had signed a contract with humans, right? In the end, Noah had done it easily. Moreover, it was a servant contract without compensation. Good Lord, you've done something that has never been done before, and I'm afraid will never be replicated in the future. How did this world give birth to such a foul human like you? Asashel really felt all kinds of imbalance. Back then, in order to conclude a contract with one of the 5 dragon kings, the golden dragon god, Fafnir, not only did I use all kinds of connections, but I also found his whereabouts with great difficulty and finally concluded an equal contract with compensation. So far, I don't know how many legendary treasures I've spent. You, on the other hand, casually abducted a dragon god and lived with him for a period of time. You made him act cute all the time and even brought back another dragon god. In the end, you actually made him willingly give himself to you. Which great god's illegitimate child are you? One of the 5 dragon kings, the golden dragon god Fafnir. That was the famous dragon king in Norse mythology, famous for collecting treasures from all over the world. The legend that dragons like to collect treasures was mostly spread because of the actions of this dragon king. In order to be able to conclude a contract with Fafnir, Asashel had not only searched all over the world for this dragon king, who flew everywhere and collected treasures from all over the world, but he also finally succeeded with all kinds of precious treasures as the price. One could imagine how difficult it was to conclude a contract with a powerful object. This was because Fafnir was famous for collecting treasures and had a weakness that could be found. Asashel used this point to bargain and finally succeeded in concluding a contract with the Dragon King. Otherwise, even if I can find a Dragon King, Demon King level contract partner, the difficulty of successfully forming a contract with him is definitely much higher than directly defeating him. Under such circumstances, Noah played with the 2 Lolas all day long and enjoyed himself immensely. In the end, the 2 dragon gods signed a contract with him. Not only was it free of charge, but it was also a servant contract that only obeyed his master's orders. How could Asashel feel balanced? In response, Noah merely rolled his eyes. Don't think I don't know. I've heard from Syzax that you're now eyeing Typhon, the king of monsters in Greece. You're planning to form a contract with him. Once you succeed, who would dare to mess with you in the future? The king of monsters in Greek mythology, Typhon. As mentioned before, this guy was the father of all kinds of famous demons. In terms of fame and strength, he was not below Fenrir before he lost his power. If it wasn't for the sudden appearance of Noah, then the person who replaced the declining Fenrir to enter the top 10 of the world would be Typhon. If Asashel could really form a contract with Typhon, it would be equivalent to getting a top 10 fighter in the world. Therefore, Asashel was just the pot calling the kettle black. Just as Noah was thinking about it, Asashel yelled out, "What are you doing?" You also said that it would only count if the contract was successfully formed. If it was so easy to form a contract with Typhon, Zeus wouldn't have had his hands and feet broken by Typhon. Even if it was successful, I don't know what kind of price I would have to pay. If the other party pays with my life and even soul, even if it was successful, would I dare to form a contract with him? That was true. Typhon's fame and strength were well known, but just like Fenrir, Typhon was also a fierce creature in his own mythology. He was not a kind person. For such a fierce creature, even if it could form a contract, the price to pay would definitely be a frightening level. It's because of this that the contract is difficult. Asashel sighed in all kinds of ways. Besides, Typhon can't be compared to Orpheus and Lilith. The more he said, the more Asashel felt unconvinced. It's already very surprising that Wally could subdue Fenrir, but that was also at the cost of a substantial reduction in Fenrir's power. Even so, he only let Fenrir be a member of the team, not a contract object. Asashel looked at Noah. I'm starting to wonder, how did you manage to abduct those two dragon gods? Can you not talk about abduction every time you open your mouth? It feels very evil coming out of your mouth. Noah said angrily. Besides, Orpheus and Lilith also formed a contract unconsciously and spontaneously. They had never thought of forming a contract with me before. Even so, didn't you still succeed in getting those two dragon gods in the end? Asashel curled his lips. Don't take it for granted. You. Noah was speechless. I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. I'm here to ask you for a favor. With that said, Noah took out his gift card and handed it to Asashel. What's this? Asashel's attention was immediately drawn to the gift card. He took it curiously and flipped through it. I feel a wonderful power fluctuation. It shouldn't be an ordinary card, right? This card can be used to store a lot of things. Not only can it store food, water, and clothes, but it can also be used to store weapons, props, and other things that can exert power, Noah explained. In addition, it can also allow contract creatures to reside in it. So convenient. Asashel raised his eyebrows and became more interested in the gift card. It's quite an interesting prop. Why don't you let me study it? You can study it if you want. Noah shrugged. But before that, you have to help me see if there's any way to modify this card and make the space inside suitable for contract creatures to live in. Store food, water, and clothes. That was not the main purpose of the gift card. The main purpose of the gift card was to store gifts. After becoming Noah's contract creatures, Orpheus and Lilith were also considered Noah's gifts and could be stored in the gift card. However, Aster and Athena said that the gift card wasn't suitable for people to live in. If Aster and Athena were to stay in the gift card, they would choose to go into hibernation. They would only wake up when Noah called for them or when they sensed that Noah was in trouble. After forming a contract with Orpheus and Lilith, Noah made a decision. In the future, he would bring Orpheus and Lilith with him, even if he went to other worlds. After all, Orpheus and Lilith were different from Letitia and Pest. There was nothing for them to do in this world. In addition to their purity, Noah really couldn't bear to leave the two dragon god girls behind. Noah really couldn't bear to leave them behind. However, although it wasn't difficult to bring Orpheus and Lilith along, it was difficult to bring two astonishingly pure little girls around the world. At this time, Noah thought of the gift card. It wasn't easy for Orpheus and Lilith to live a decent life. If I bring them along, I can't let the two children stay in a world with nothing and sleep alone all day long, right? Noah said. So, I want to ask you if there's a way to modify the gift card to make the environment inside more comfortable and easier to live in. In this way, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith could live a comfortable life in the gift card that was no different from the apartment. For this purpose, Noah especially went to the underworld to look for Asashel and asked this guy who could even create artificial artifacts to help him. If that's the case, it's not difficult. The demon realm originally had the technology to create an alternate space. Using that technology to modify your card, the success rate isn't low, Asashel said doubtfully. But why do you have to go through so much trouble to bring a contract partner with you? Can't you summon a contract partner at any time by learning summoning magic or something like that? In other words, how could the summoning be successful? Don't worry about it, just do as I say. Noah sighed. By the way, Why do you suddenly want to form a contract with Typhon? With that, Asashal's casual expression began to turn serious. Chapter 1938. He slowly placed the gift card on the table beside him, picked up a cup of coffee on the table, and took a sip before speaking again. I have a hunch that there will definitely be a bigger and more dangerous disaster than before. For that time, I must prepare in advance and get enough combat power to deal with any situation. For this reason, I intend to sign a contract with Typhon. Asashar's words caused Noah's eyes to flicker slightly, and he replied indifferently, "That's right." "Because of Lezawim?" "That's right," Asashal affirmed. "Although that guy is a bastard, his evil intentions are far thicker than anyone else's. He's basically the most typical type of antagonist. Someone like him definitely wouldn't obtain the Holy Grail just to revive the evil dragon and increase his combat strength." Asashal had said the same thing before. However, Noah didn't expect Asashal to be so serious in preparing a countermeasure. "Forming a contract with Typhon was just a preparation for me. If Lezavim really leads the evil dragon army to attack us, Fafnir and I might not be enough." Asashal knocked on the table. "Apart from me, I've also informed Syzax, Michael, and the rest of the mythical forces to prepare for the upcoming war. Are you ready for this?" Noah frowned. "Could it be that you're just worrying too much?" "Maybe it's because of that," Asashal said nonchalantly. "However, there's nothing wrong with being careful. Now that the various factions have reached an agreement and achieved peace, all that's left is to remove the thorn in our side, the calamity. Under such a beautiful situation, I definitely can't let that bastard Lai Lin destroy the peace we've worked so hard to achieve." Asashal's eyes burned with fighting spirit as he spoke. That wasn't battle intent but a sense of mission. The fallen angel governor, who wanted to see peace more than anyone else, would definitely not watch the upcoming peace be destroyed by a bastard like Lezavim. In fact, Syzax and Michael, who have dealt with Lezavim before, have also taken it seriously. They agreed with my point of view and began to make preparations. Asashal sighed. Although the rest of the mythical forces are also paying attention to the resurrection of the evil dragons, they don't think that Lezavim, the son of the Demon King, can do anything. They don't know that the evil dragons are only a threat. Lezavim is the real threat. Seeing that Athashel kept mentioning Lezavim's threat, Noah asked in confusion, "I know that Lezawim is a bastard, but is he bad enough to make you so vigilant?" "You've only met him once, so of course you don't know how much of a bastard he is," Asashal said. "Do you know why Wali hates Lezawim so much that he even wants to kill him?" "I'm not sure." Noah shook his head. However, Wali did say that Lezavim doesn't deserve the name of Lucifer. "That's true." Asashal agreed with Wali's evaluation. "All of that guy's behavior is just for his own enjoyment. He'll be happy when he sees others in pain, happy when he sees others in despair, happy when he sees others in tears and despair. It's as if he's the crystallization of malice and can't be called the Demon King. Or, in the eyes of others, the Demon King was just like what Asashal said, a bad guy. But if there was only evil without honor and dignity, how could he be called a king? And that guy Lezavim has nothing to do with honor and dignity." Asashal snorted coldly. "The reason why Wali hates him so much is that he once instigated his son to abuse Wali." Noah was stunned. Since Lezavim was Wali's grandfather, he was naturally the father of Wali's father. Instigated his son to abuse Wali? Noah was stunned. Doesn't that mean that Lezavim let Wali's father abuse his son? That's right. Asashal's eyes flashed with unhappiness. In Lezavim's heart, son and grandson are not worth mentioning at all. They are all props for his enjoyment. He sincerely enjoys his son abusing his grandson and takes pleasure in it. Don't you think such a guy is a bastard? Not to mention the demon world that was currently changing. The demons who inherited the ancient Demon King's bloodline were definitely not good people. Take Wali's father, Lezavim's son, for example. He was a typical demon. Not only did his son inherit the noble Lucifer bloodline, but he was also the White Dragon Emperor. His potential was limitless and was destined to stand out at the top of the world in the future. As the father of such a gifted kid, Wali's father didn't feel happy or proud at all. He only felt that his status was threatened and that he would be surpassed by his son in the future and be fiercely suppressed by his son. A demon simply couldn't stand such a thing. Even if the target was his son, it was the same. Therefore, that person was afraid of his own son, Wally. He was always worried that his son would surpass him in the future, suppress him, or even kill him. In the eyes of an evil person, everything in this world was malicious. Under such circumstances, Lezivim instigated his son to abuse Wally and didn't let his son kill Wally, enjoying the process. The more Asashel spoke, the more unhappy he felt. In the end, Wally escaped and came to me. Since childhood, he held hatred and killing intent towards Lezivim and grew up at an astonishing speed. He didn't expect Wally to have such a past. Perhaps this was the reason why Wally pursued power. Without power, you will only be controlled by others. Only with power can you control your own life and even the lives of others. Wally grew up under such a belief. Asashel sighed. Fortunately, Wally didn't become a captive of power. Although he pursued power, he wasn't blind. It was because of this that Wally was able to develop Tyrannosaurus, right? Otherwise, he would have been immersed in the power of Tyrannosaurus and disregarded his own safety. Although it was simple, Noah could imagine how much effort Asashel had put in to prevent Wally from becoming a captive of power. The reason why Wally could become the White Dragon Emperor with a bright future was definitely due to Asashel's education and influence. At this time, Asashel said this again. Later, I received news that because Wally escaped, Lezivim, who could no longer enjoy the joy of his son and grandson, killed his own son, who was Wally's father. Noah's expression turned cold. Now you know how much of a bastard that guy is, right? Asashel laughed coldly. Since such a bastard has appeared again, he definitely won't stop until he turns the entire world upside down. Not to mention he still has the Holy Grail and the evil dragon in his hands. That's why I have to be on guard, Asashel reminded. Haven't you noticed that Wally and his teammates have disappeared recently? After Asashel's words, Noah realized what Asashel meant. Indeed, he hadn't heard any news about Wally's team recently. They went to search for traces of the disaster squad. Asashel revealed the puzzle. No one wants to defeat Lezivim more than Wally. I think with Wally's dedication to Lezivim, he will definitely be able to find that guy before Lezivim does the worst thing, right? But won't that be a problem? Noah asked. Even if he finds Lezivim's location, if Wally loses his mind and rushes in, he might get hurt instead, right? Don't worry, Wally isn't that irrational. Once he finds Lezivim's whereabouts, he will definitely report it to me, Asashel said mysteriously. Moreover, recently, Wally's development of the divine artifact has reached another level. Thinking about it, even if he faces Lezivim's divine artifact nullification, he should have the possibility of winning, right? This news made Noah couldn't help but raise his eyebrows as he muttered to himself. It seemed that Wally's pursuit of Arubian's ability was successful. He just didn't know what kind of ability it would be. Noah began to look forward to it. Chapter 1939. After giving the gift card to Asashel for modification, Asashel directly told Noah that he would come back to collect it in a few days. With the technology used by the demon realm to construct alternate spaces, modifying the environment of the gift card was not a difficult task. The reason why he needed a few days was because Asashel wanted to study Noah's gift card. In fact, the use of the gift card was not something rare to the existence of the mystical side of this world. After all, in this world, many mystical magic and spells could open the entrance to alternate spaces and use them as storage spaces. In terms of convenience, it was almost comparable to the gift card. For example, Genova, Irina, and Yuta usually stored their weapons in the alternate spaces and would only take them out during battle. Even Genova, Irina, and Yuta used this method to store items, let alone others. However, not everything could be stored in this alternate space. Because it existed between the real world and the dimensional gap, the alternate spaces had harsh environments that outsiders could not imagine. Basically, it could not store living things, food, water, and daily necessities. It could only be used to store unconventional props and items. Therefore, the alternate spaces were used to store powerful weapons, rare props, and legendary items that were not usually used. No one had ever used it to store daily necessities. It was also because of this that when they went to the vampire's territory the last time, the Jamanli's family had to bring their own luggage. Asashel said that Noah's gift card was convenient because of its wide range of storage. If possible, Asashel probably wanted to develop something similar to the gift card that could be used to store daily necessities like food, water, and clothes. This function was not to be underestimated. In the box court, the reason why the gift card had such convenience was to deal with the Demon King's attack. The Demon King's gift game was compulsory and did not require the consent of the participants. Therefore, sometimes there were situations that required a long period of war. Under such circumstances, could one still count on the Demon King to provide them with food and water? That was naturally impossible. Therefore, the gift card had such a high status in the box court. It could be used to store gifts as well as food, water, and clothes to ensure long-term compatibility. When Asashel realized this benefit, he decided to research it. Arthashel must have wanted to use the gift card in the war before Lezavim started a large-scale battle, right? He just didn't know if he could make it in time. No matter what, Asashel was willing to help Noah, so Noah was relieved. However, as soon as Noah left Athashel's place and was about to return to the human world, Sazak suddenly jumped out of a teleportation portal. Sazak noticed Noah and smiled. He raised his hand and greeted him like an old friend instead of a demon king. Yo Noah, looking for Asashel? It had to be said that Sazak's hearty greeting was indeed very approachable. However, that was not the demeanor of a demon king at all. Noah turned his head and looked in Sazak's direction. Apart from Sazak, there was another person behind him. It was a tall woman with silver hair, but she was wearing a maid's uniform and exuded an awe-inspiring aura. Noah knew this person. She was Sazak's queen, and the current demon king Lucifer's kin. At the same time, she was also recognized as the strongest queen in the underworld Gulifia. Back then, Noah had met Gulifia during the marriage between Riaz and Rizel. Therefore, Noah knew about her. Although she was wearing a maid's uniform and was the head maid of the Gimli family, Gulifia was Sazak's wife. Moreover, she was quite strong. Noah had heard that Gulifia had once competed with Leviathan, Seraph, one of the 4 demon kings, for the title of the strongest female demon in the underworld. In other words, Gulifia could compete with Leviathan, the demon king Seraph. Her strength was definitely on the level of a demon king. Noah hadn't seen Gulifia for a long time. As soon as Noah saw Gulifia, he immediately had a strange feeling. His eyes were fixed on Gulifia, and he didn't shift his gaze away. Both Sazak and Gulifia were stunned by this. Lord Noah. Gulifia frowned subtly, as if she found it unnatural. Excuse me, did I do something rude? I say Noah, don't tell me you've taken a liking to Gulifia? Sazak was even more whimsical. His expression was a little strange, and then he became excited. No, Gulifia can't. Gulifia can't. Lord Sazak. Gulifia's furrowed brows relaxed, and she spoke helplessly and sternly. Please don't say such strange things. That's not what a demon king Lucifer should do. But, Sazak was a little conflicted. Noah is my good friend and Laia's fiancé. You're my wife. If Noah takes a liking to you, I'll be very troubled. His wife being taken a liking to another man, and that man was his good friend and sister's fiancé. That's just a little troubling. If it was another man, it was possible that they would break off all relations, right? Lord Sazak. Gulifia was about to teach him a lesson. However, Noah suddenly spoke at that moment. Gulifia, if I remember correctly, your surname is Lucifergus, right? Noah's sudden question stunned both Sazak and Gulifia once more. However, Gulifia quickly reacted. Although she was puzzled as to why Noah would ask such a question, she answered honestly. Yes, my full name is Gulifia Lucifergus. Noah's eyes suddenly flickered. Lucifergus. That surname was quite famous in the demonic world. It wasn't because it was the surname of the most powerful queen, but because it was a famous pure-blooded demonic family. Lucifergus wasn't one of the 72-pillar demonic families, but a famous demonic family outside of the 72-pillar demonic families. This family had served the demon king Lucifer for generations, and they were famous for it. However, Gulifia was the only one left in the family. This was because the one it served was not the current demon king Lucifer, but the previous demon king Lucifer. In other words, Lucifergus was a pure-blooded demonic family of the former demon king. When the 4 demon kings were all dead and the demonic world entered a period of reformation, Wuxia, as a member of the former demon king's faction, fought against the faction that wanted to bring in the current demon king. It was then that Wuxia and Sarah fought for the title of the most powerful female demon. In the end, Wuxia met and fell in love with Swordsmanship, the hero of the reformist faction who displayed his prowess on the front lines. The two of them passed countless trials and finally got together, becoming a legend in the underworld. Noah had heard Leah's mention that before, but he forgot about it. Now Noah narrowed his eyes at Wuxia's eye-catching silver hair, as well as the fact that she vaguely resembled a certain person in his memory, as well as the surname she used when she reported her name. Wuxia, are you really the only one left in your family? Why do you ask? Wuxia's face was calm, but her eyes became serious. The Lucifergus family was a faction that supported the former demon king. They were all wiped out, and I was the only one who chose to join the demon king's faction and serve the current demon king Lucifer. That's how I survived. It's no secret in the underworld. Yes, it's no secret in the underworld. Noah smiled bitterly. But the situation might be a little troublesome. Wuxia was puzzled. Swordsmanship, on the other hand, seemed to have noticed something. He looked at Noah with a serious expression. Tell me about it. Chapter 1940. No one knew what Noah talked about with Swordsmanship and Wuxia after that. However, a passing demon noticed that after Noah left, Swordsmanship's expression was a little heavy, and he looked at Wuxia with a little worry in his eyes. Wuxia, who had always been strict, was at a loss, which was rare. After that, some observant people found out. Swordsmanship and Wuxia were making a lot of preparations. What were they preparing for? They were preparing to go to war with the Disaster Squad. Previously, Azazel had mentioned that the Disaster Squad would definitely cause a huge disaster under the leadership of Lezavim. For this reason, Swordsmanship, who had dealt with Lezavim for a long time, attached great importance to it and had been preparing for war with the Disaster Squad. Now this kind of preparation was even more serious. It was so serious that Swordsmanship called all his family members back, as if he was planning to have a final battle with a certain mythical force, which made many people secretly start to worry. As for Noah, he had returned to the human world and lived the same daily life as before. Everything seemed so calm, but there were undercurrents surging. Therefore, almost everyone had the same thought. This was the calm before the storm. Even if it looked calm on the surface, this calm gave people a kind of pressure, as if it could collapse at any time, making people's hearts heavy. Under the influence of this atmosphere, not to mention the human world, all the mythical forces that had reached a peace agreement began to be very vigilant and strengthened their defenses, ready to deal with a sudden war at any time. However, even so, what should have happened still happened. A few days later, Noah received the modified gift card. But the next day, Azazel jumped directly to Noah's apartment through the teleportation magic circle, bringing unimaginable bad news. What? Noah exclaimed in shock. Both heaven and the underworld were attacked? That's right. Azazel's expression was also extremely ugly. Last night, the heaven realm and the underworld were attacked at the same time. The casualties have not been calculated yet, but the losses are very heavy. The heaven realm was captured in the first 5 days, and the underworld's demon king territory was destroyed and turned into ruins. This was indeed a disastrous loss. The heavenly realm was divided into 7 levels, and each level was measured in terms of Tion. It was said that the God of the Holy Bible once lived in the 7th heaven, the highest level in the heaven realm. After the God of the Holy Bible passed away, only the system in charge of the divine equipment and blessing remained. No one lived there. The blazing angels led by Michael lived on the 6th day, and guarded the only way to the 7th day. They had always been managing the operation of the heaven realm and the system, minimizing the impact of the death of God. In the end, other than the 6th and 7th days guarded by the blazing angel, the other 5 days had all fallen. Wasn't that a heavy loss? As for the underworld's demon king territory, it was the territory of the 4 demon kings. It was the center of the entire demon world. The demon king territory had been turned into ruins. Most likely the entire demon world was in complete chaos right now. Fortunately, Swordsmanship and Michael had always been preparing for war. Even if the attack was too sudden, they still repelled the enemy. Asashel knocked on the table hatefully. On the other hand, the fallen angels were not attacked at all. We didn't even receive any news when the attack started. By the time I found out, the attacks of heaven and the underworld had already ended. The first 5 days and the Demon King territory were destroyed. Damn it! Asashal's frustration was not without reason. In fact, even Noah's brows were tightly knitted together. If they could contact Noah, Syzax and Michael would definitely ask Noah for help, right? At the very least, Syzax and Michael would ask Asashal for help and let the fallen angel camp go over. However, there was not a single bit of news about such a huge attack, causing both heaven and the underworld to suffer heavy casualties. That must be Azidahaka's doing, Asashal said regretfully. With that evil dragon's ability, there are many ways to prevent heaven and the underworld from contacting each other. Even the fallen angels who live on the other side of the underworld did not receive any news. Naturally, the other forces did not receive any news at all. The three-headed demon dragon of the fire worship sect was famous for controlling thousands of spells. In the box court, due to the box court's unique rules of bestowment games and the fact that it had become the final trial for humans, it had surpassed the original mythical order. Azidaka's thousands of spells had become a form of bestowment. It was a gift that upheld the belief that all technology and concepts in the world could not be without a trace of malice. As the absolute evil that carried all malice in the world, it could allow the three-headed demon dragon to unconditionally obtain all knowledge related to the game. In this world, the three-headed demon dragon that had not transcended its own mythical relationship displayed magical abilities that were consistent with the mythical relationship. With its terrifying magical attainments, it was easy for it to prevent the activation of the communication magic formation and make it impossible for anyone to detect the attack. However, it also depended on the situation. To be able to completely conceal the movements of such a large-scale attack on heaven and the underworld, even the fallen angels who also lived in the underworld, showed how terrifying Azidahaka's ability was. Asashal took a deep breath and suppressed the anger and unwillingness in his heart as he looked at Noah. Now Jamonli's and Sidi's families have returned to the underworld to help clean up the mess. However, the heavy casualties of the demons and angels have also alerted all the forces that the disaster team is no longer the same as before. With the support of several famous legendary evil dragons, it definitely has the ability to single-handedly defeat a force. So in order to avoid being defeated one by one, it's time for all of you to take action. Noah continued Asashal's words. Based on your style, you should have begun to gather the main gods of the various mythical forces and prepare to gather together to formulate a battle strategy, right? After all, I don't have a good temper to not fight back after being beaten. Asashal looked at Noah closely. For this, I also want to ask you to take action. Your power is too important to us. As long as you are around, at least we will have confidence. All the mythical forces have gathered together, but they don't have confidence in the end. Noah laughed. If this were to spread, it would definitely be a joke, right? This also proves that the enemy is so difficult to deal with. Asashal laughed bitterly. And if we can have the power of a god slayer that is absolutely invincible, I think no matter who it is, they will have confidence, right? With that said, Asashal glanced to the side. Moreover, you still have those two treasures. They are incredible combat power. In Asashal's field of vision, Orpheus and Lilith were like twin sisters, sitting there and nibbling on snacks. Sensing Asashal's gaze, Orpheus looked up. Athashel, Orpheus said in a concise manner. Do you want me to help you? Yes. Asashal nodded very straightforwardly. We need your power. But I am no longer infinite. Orpheus shook his head, reached out his hand, and touched Lilith's head beside him. We will no longer be infinite. Even if you are not infinite, you are still the dragon gods. Asashal's expression became serious. Even if you are not invincible, you are still the strongest. At least no one will doubt this. Orpheus pondered for a moment before saying, That's right. If Noah goes, then I will go. Just as Orpheus expressed his stance, Lilith also tilted her head and said so. Same for Lilith. Looking at the two most powerful dragon gods, Asashal felt a sense of helplessness in his heart. In the past, the extraordinary dragon god who did not intervene in the affairs of the world, and had been quietly watching the development of the world, and never intervening was no longer there. Whether it was Orpheus or Lilith, now they only belonged to one person. They belonged to Noah alone. In this regard, Asashel only sighed and did not find it strange, because this person who had Orpheus and Lilith was even more against the rules than the infinite dragon god who was once invincible in the world. Under Asashel's gaze, Noah closed his eyes and stood up after a while. Let's go. Chapter 1941. Just like the last time, the representatives of the major mythical organizations would gather in the underworld to discuss the matter of Lezavim and the evil dragon army. Last time, the main gods of the various mythical organizations did not come in person because they were worried that the existence of the God-Slayer would attack them. Apart from Northern Europe, Greece, India, and Mount Meru, the other mythical organizations only sent representatives. This time, the various mythological forces had already reached an agreement, and with the God-Slayer himself as a deterrent, no one was worried that they would be put in a disadvantageous position. All the main gods of the mythological forces had come personally and gathered in the underworld. However, the underworld demon king's territory had been destroyed and turned into ruins. The major mythical organizations naturally could not gather there for a meeting. Therefore, this meeting was decided to be held in the Gimli territory, which had a good relationship with the God-Slayer. The Gimli family would personally provide the venue and be responsible for the reception. When Noah brought Orpheus and Lilith here, Asashel did not let him go directly to the meeting place. Instead, he brought him into a private room. Here, the four demon kings, Syzax, Achuka, Seraphil, and Felubium, gathered together and sat around a table, seemingly discussing something. Noah immediately attracted everyone's attention as soon as he entered. Little Noah is here? Seraphil waved at Noah enthusiastically. Long time no see. Long time no see, Noah. Achuka also greeted him with a smile on her coquettish face. Although we were also present at the last meeting of the major organizations, it became your home ground. We didn't even have the chance to greet you properly. Since then, my workload has increased. Felubium seemed to be in low spirits. Fortunately, I still have reliable dependents. Otherwise, if I continue to work like this, I will definitely die. However, Asashel is the busiest one. We are only in charge of the aftermath. He went to the various mythical organizations to discuss the peace process, Syzax said with a smile. Therefore, the biggest contributor should be Asashel. I'm just in charge of the labor. The one with the biggest contribution is here. Asashel patted Noah's shoulder. Without Noah, the negotiation wouldn't have gone so smoothly. If that was the case, we would have suffered unimaginable hardships. Now, we can be considered very lucky to be able to solve the problem just by running around. That's right, that's right. The four demon kings immediately nodded. Noah is the one with the greatest contribution. Looking at the four demon kings who were more perfunctory than flattering him, Noah smiled bitterly in his heart. Undoubtedly, these four fellows were all demon kings, but they were still as carefree and merry as before. Others didn't even know how to ridicule them. However, Noah was sharp enough to notice it. Whether it was Syzax, Achuka, Seraphil, or Felubium, there was a faint trace of darkness in their eyes. It was an expression of anger and unwillingness to accept the fact that the Demon Lord territory had been completely destroyed. Under such circumstances, Noah was not fooled by the superficial skills of the four demon kings, and went straight to the point. Looking at you guys, your losses are really heavy. The smiles on the faces of the four demon kings immediately faded little by little. The losses are indeed heavy, Syzax said as calmly as he could. Not only did the Demon Lord territory turn into ruins, but the demons who went to the front line also suffered heavy casualties. It's a serious loss for the entire demon realm. However, fortunately, our previous preparations were not in vain. At least we reacted in time when the attack began, and allowed the ordinary residents to take refuge and evacuate. Achuka sighed. Otherwise, I'm afraid even the ordinary residents would have suffered, right? Now, the residents of the Demon Lord territory have been scattered to the territories of various pure-blooded demon families for temporary shelter. Felubium's voice was still as weak as ever. The land of the underworld is big enough, so there's no need to worry about this. The problem is that if such an attack happens again, we may really have no way to deal with it. How can the massive calamity be so evil? Tears welled up in Seraphil's eyes. Undoubtedly, no one has done anything bad, but they still have to suffer such a disaster. The atmosphere began to become a little heavy. Obviously, the destruction of the Demon Lord territory had not only caused the demon realm to become chaotic, but it had also affected many people. Although Sazax, Achuka, Seraphil, and Felubium had different reactions, they were still brooding over the massive calamity's attack. Currently, we're doing our best to analyze the tactic that Dahaka used on the day of the attack to cut off the communication between the various forces and conceal the movement of the attack. Achuka unfolded an intricate magic array in her hands, and all kinds of mysterious characters jumped on it like data. I believe that it won't be long before this tactic is completely analyzed, and this kind of thing won't be allowed to happen a second time. However, Dahaka is the legendary evil dragon who has mastered thousands of types of magic. No one can be sure that he doesn't have a second similar tactic. Felubium continued Achuka's words. So, while Achuka is responsible for the technical analysis, we're also building a new communication tactic. Once it's successful, even if Dahaka uses a similar tactic, it won't work. Felubium's words made Azathiel breathe a sigh of relief. Felubium always looked like she was afraid of trouble and was weak, but this demon lord was an expert in military matters. The demon lord's contribution in successfully repelling the massive calamity was probably the greatest. The 4 demon lords all had their own areas of expertise. Achuka was technical. Seraphil was diplomatic. Felubium was military. Sazax, on the other hand, was in charge of all miscellaneous matters other than technology, diplomacy, and military affairs. Therefore, in the past, when discussing important matters, Noah would talk to Sazax face to face instead of the other demon kings. Since Felubium said so, there should be no problem with this new communication method. After all, being able to maintain communication would give them the most advantageous situation on the battlefield. As a military expert, Felubium knew this best and would definitely be able to make perfect preparations. So who are the attackers? Noah looked at the 4 demon lords. The heavens and the underworld were attacked at the same time. This proves that the massive calamity has split into 2, right? The 4 demon lords immediately looked at each other. The ones who attacked the underworld were the evil dragon army led by Dahaka, Glendale, and Nidhogg. Sazax answered Noah's question. The ones who attacked the heavens were the evil dragon army led by Apophis and Radon. The evil dragon army? Azathiel's expression was somewhat unpleasant. That bastard Lylin. Did he abuse the power of the Holy Grail and transform a large number of evil dragons? And forget about those evil dragon minions. The 3-headed evil dragon, the violent evil dragon, and the gluttonous evil dragon can continue to revive even if they are defeated. Seraphil said angrily. Especially that gluttonous evil dragon. It said something about my soft skin and tender flesh must be delicious. It kept drooling and trying to get close to me, but I can't kill it. It's so infuriating. Didn't I also get targeted by that violent evil dragon? Felubium said with a sigh. As soon as it heard that I was a demon lord, that evil dragon called Glendale kept rushing towards me. Even when it was attacked by my kin, it still rushed towards me as if nothing had happened. It's really unflattering. What about Dahaka? Noah asked the question he was most concerned about. Who's dealing with Dahaka? Both Sazax and Achuka looked over at the same time. It can't be? Azathiel was shocked. The 2 of you are attacking together? Sazax and Achuka were surpassers who could be ranked among the top 10 in the world. If one were to look at the dragon's level, they would be at least 2 heavenly dragon levels. Sazax and Achuka actually attacked together to deal with Dahaka? We didn't use our full strength. Achuka shook her head. But we can also feel that Dahaka didn't use his full strength either. I heard that the clone Kuvok, who is as famous as Dahaka, seems to have reached the heavenly dragon level, right? Sazax's expression became serious. Perhaps that new moon dark dragon isn't the only evil dragon that has reached the heavenly dragon level. Azathiel held his breath. As for Noah, his eyes flickered, and he fell into deep thought. Dahaka. Not only did it block the movements of the heavenly realm and the underworld, it even forced Sazax and Achuka to attack. Even if the 3 parties didn't use their full strength, it was already shocking enough. Although it couldn't be compared to absolute evil in the box court, this mystic dragon wasn't someone to be trifled with either. No matter what, you've all worked very hard, Noah said suddenly. We'll talk about the rest at the meeting. Sazax, Achuka, Seraphil and Felubium all nodded heavily. All right, the meeting should begin. Azathiel clapped his hands as if he wanted to wave away the heavy atmosphere. Let's go. This time, Noah nodded and walked to the meeting place with Sazax, Achuka, Seraphil, Felubium and Azathiel. Chapter 1942. The venue provided by the Gimli family was a palace. It was a palace that was usually used for important balls and banquets. On this day, this palace had become the meeting place for various mythological forces. An endless stream of gods and representatives from various forces entered the hall. At this moment in the incomparably vast palace, a huge round table sat there. The round table was extremely large. Even if every seat was separated by 1 or 2 meters, there were still hundreds of seats. Those who could sit were all the main gods of the largest mythological forces. Among them the 4 main gods Odin, Zeus, Shiva and Sakra were also present. Just like in the previous meeting, they all sat in the seats closest to the main seat. The difference from the previous meeting was in the Greek mythology. This time Zeus still had Poseidon beside him, but Hades was not there. Moreover, even Poseidon did not take a seat. He just stood beside Zeus like a guard. The main gods of the other mythological forces were all present. They were all discussing the attack on heaven and the underworld. Among them, keywords such as evil dragon, holy grail, and son of the demon king could be faintly heard. This proved that all the forces attached great importance to this matter. It seemed that all the mythological forces were aware of the threat. Powerful evil dragons appeared one after another. A divine tool that could subvert the principles of life. The culprit who controlled all of this. When these factors were combined, even the demons and angels who had long been prepared for war suffered an unimaginable disaster. If the other mythological forces were attacked in the same way, in a situation where they were isolated and without help, they would probably suffer heavy casualties, right? Therefore, the gods had no choice but to be alert. There were many more gods participating in this meeting than the previous one. Coupled with such a discussion, the entire hall was extremely noisy. Until a certain moment a god suddenly spoke. They're here. As soon as the voice fell, the entire hall was silent. All the gods turned their eyes to the direction of the door, causing a huge pressure to fill the surroundings. Under such circumstances, Noah brought Orpheus and Lilith and arrived late. Behind him, Sazax, Achuka, Seraphil, Felubium, and Asashel walked in as if they were his entourage. Under the silent pressure, almost all the gods cast their gazes on Noah at the first moment and started whispering to each other. Is that the god slayer? He was the one who easily defeated the 3 main gods of Greece, right? I can faintly sense the fluctuations of a dragon, as well as a sense of oppression. It seems that he is indeed not a simple character. As they had not come personally the last time, many of the main gods of the mythical organizations had not seen Noah before. Now that they had seen the legendary godslayer with their own eyes, all the overgods present paid special attention to him. They constantly studied Noah. However, when they saw Orpheus and Lilith next to Noah, all the overgods were slightly stunned, and they all shut their mouths. Only Sakra looked at Orpheus and Lilith, who were obediently following behind Noah, and curled his lips into a smile. Just as the rumors say, the infinite dragon god has been split into 2, and it has yet to reunite as one. What a waste. The originally invincible dragon god has become like this. It really makes one unable to laugh even if one wanted to. Just like before, Sakra's words were so nasty that one could not help but feel angry. However, Asashel also said that the more important a person was to Sakra, the worse Sakra's attitude would be. Now, Sakra had said such nasty words to Orpheus and Lilith. It meant that Orpheus and Lilith were still highly valued in Sakra's heart, right? However, this time Shiva also looked at Orpheus and suddenly smiled. Orpheus, it has been a long time since we last met, right? Orpheus raised his eyes and looked at Shiva, but he did not have any reaction. He only spoke faintly. Long time no see. Yes, I still remember the first time we met, Shiva said with a nostalgic tone. The feeling you gave me was endless and mysterious. You were like a black hole. You could die if you touched it. There was no limit. Looking at you like that, I felt powerless. You, the infinite dragon god, the true red dragon god emperor, And the God-slayer can also be counted as one who can make me feel powerless. Saying that, Shiva shook his head in pity. It's a pity. Although you're still powerful, you're no longer as suffocating as before. Since your other half is by your side, why don't you return to being limitless, to being invincible? Hearing that, Orpheus fell silent. At this time, Lilith raised her head and looked at Shiva. She said, "Don't worry, Shiva. You are not Lilith's match." This sentence made Shiva choke. Yes, even if his power had greatly decreased, Shiva was still not Orpheus and Lilith's match. Since Shiva, who used to be ranked second, was not Orpheus and Lilith's match, then no one else could beat Orpheus and Lilith. Was Lilith indirectly saying that even if they did not return to being one, the dragon god was still undefeatable? As expected of the once invincible existence. Sakura laughed mockingly. "You are more arrogant than before." Arrogant? Lilith immediately tilted her head. She almost had a question mark printed on her forehead. Her face was full of confusion. Lilith, arrogant? Just as Lilith was confused, Orpheus reached out his hand and stroked Lilith's head as usual, making Lilith reveal a comfortable expression. Seeing that, Noah could not help but laugh. Although he knew that it was not the time to laugh, Noah still could not help but want to laugh. Lilith must have thought that Orpheus was bullied by Shiva, and wanted to stand up for Orpheus. That was why she said that, right? In the end, Lord Dragon God's pure and innocent thoughts were mistaken by Shiva and Sakura as Lilith telling them that even if they did not return to being one, they were still not his match. In the end, they had nothing to say. It really made people want to laugh. However, it had to be said that Lilith's unintentional words did help Orpheus vent his anger. If it weren't for Lilith, then it would be Noah's turn to help Orpheus vent his anger. "By the way, let me tell you another piece of news," Asashel suddenly said. "Orpheus and Lilith have already formed a contract with Noah, and it is a servant contract. This time the three of them will be our trump card." A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The dragon god formed a contract with the god slayer? And it is a servant contract? My god! All the gods were in an uproar. Even Shiva's and Sakura's pupils shrunk slightly as their gazes returned to Noah. This person had done something that made even the gods feel powerless. The god slayer and the infinite dragon god? Even Odin laughed bitterly. The first and second place actually formed a contract. This is something that cannot be laughed at, right? Little brother, you are really good. Zeus laughed heartily. He did not have any negative emotions from being bullied by Noah. Even the infinite dragon god was subdued. Then it is not embarrassing for us three brothers to lose to you. The other main gods also began to look at Noah as if they wanted to get to know Noah again. They even looked at each other. And this effect was what Asashel wanted. With the power of the Godslayer and the two dragon gods, our chances of winning against the disaster squad are much higher. Asashel looked around at the gods. So, I suggest that this meeting should be the same as the previous one and be led by the Godslayer. Does anyone have any objections? Did anyone have any objections? Of course, no one had any objections. Not to mention that Noah was the suppressive force of the various forces, just based on the current situation. If anyone from the Myth faction were to take the seat, the other Myth faction would not be convinced. Since that was the case, the only person who could make all the Shura gods willingly give up their seats was Noah. I have no objections. Odin stroked his long beard and was the first to express his opinion. I have no objections either. Zeus followed, as if he did not care about being bullied by Noah last time. He did not hesitate at all. You do have the qualifications. Shiva nodded. Humph. Sakura just snorted softly, silently expressing his agreement. Seeing that Odin, Zeus, Shiva, and Sakura had all agreed, the other main gods looked at each other and finally could only nod. So, Noah became the leader of all the Myths faction. Needless to say, this was definitely the first time in history. Noah was not pretentious. He led Orpheus and Lilith straight to the seat of the chief and sat down directly. Then Syzax, Achuka, Seraph, Felubium, and Asashel sat down one after another. Because the heavenly realm's losses were much more serious than expected, Michael could not leave for the time being and was absent from this meeting. I said that no matter what the final decision is, the heavenly realm will support it. Asashel made such an opening statement. Then the meeting of the gods begins. Chapter 1943. Pantheon Meeting. It sounded very high-end, but in fact it was no different from a human meeting. Why did they say that? The reason was simple. After the meeting started, basically all the gods were talking excitedly. However, they were simply repeating the current information and the future dangers. Heaven and the underworld were attacked at the same time and almost fell. This proves that the opponent has the ability to take down a mythical force. We have to be careful. Nonsense. If it's just an ordinary attack, there's nothing to be afraid of. After all, we have so many forces united now. I'm afraid that we'll be cut off again and be isolated without help. When the time comes, we'll be defeated one by one. Nonsense. The most important thing now is to think of a way to get us through the current crisis. Nonsense. If we can find the headquarters of the group of disasters, then we can take the initiative and directly attack and destroy them. Nonsense. The enemy only relies on the evil dragons. No matter if it's the legendary evil dragons resurrected by the Holy Grail, or the mass-produced evil dragons transformed by the Holy Grail, they are the main force of the enemy. If we can solve the danger of the evil dragons, then the enemy has nothing to be afraid of. Still nonsense. Thousands of main gods of mythical forces gathered together and talk so enthusiastically, but in the end, the content of the topic was all nonsense. These things were already known in advance, so the gods needed to gather together and hold such a meeting to come up with a solution, wasn't it? However, in the end there was no solution. Instead, they kept repeating the information they knew. What could they come up with in the end? Therefore, including Noah, Syzax, Achuka, Seraph, Felubium, and Asashel didn't speak. Odin, Zeus, Shiva, Sakra, and the other main gods didn't participate in it either. They just listened to the repeated nonsense of the gods and kept silent. The so-called too many people referred to this situation. Even if they were gods, once there were too many of them and each of them had their own ideas, it would be impossible for them to unify their opinions. They could only repeat nonsense like this. Of course, some of the wise main gods were very clear about the theme of this meeting, so they didn't participate in this nonsense. They just sat there quietly and said nothing. It was easy to imagine that the main gods who were keeping their mouths shut at this moment were the wise ones who could really play a role in the meeting. Until a certain moment, Sakra spoke impatiently and interrupted the endless nonsense. "All right, demons, it's time for you to play your role." Sakra turned his head and looked at the 4 demon kings led by Syzax. "As victims, I'm sure you're the ones who know the trickiest part about the Calamity Group. In order to prevent the same thing from happening again, I'm sure you've already prepared the means to resist, right?" As soon as Di Shurtion's words came out, the noisy scene immediately quieted down. Everyone turned their eyes to Syzax, Achuka, Seraph, and Felubium. The 4 demon kings perked up and looked at each other. "We are indeed analyzing tactics to cut off communication, and are also developing a new method of communication." Syzax finally spoke. "So, the danger of being isolated and attacked separately should be reduced by a lot." "Very good." Odin laughed. "Finally, we've heard some useful information. It's just that the enemy's means are not to be underestimated," Azazel said. "Let's not talk about the 3-headed demonic dragon Azidahaka, who has mastered thousands of spells. Even the guardian dragon Ladin, who is rumored to be the guardian of the golden apple, is in the enemy's camp. That evil dragon's enchantment and protection are very difficult to deal with. It can isolate all of our forces with enchantments, and then attack us separately. In other words, in addition to magic, we also need to prepare means to deal with enchantments." Shiva turned his gaze to Zeus. "Greek main god, Ladin is an evil dragon in your mythology. If it's you, you should have means to deal with Ladin, right? If it's just to deal with enchantments, there are plenty. The question is whether it will work on Ladin's enchantment, right?" Zeus grinned. "Although we don't have such means, if it's the great hero Hercules who defeated Ladin, we can ask him to come out. No one knows better than him how to deal with Ladin." "Oh!" The gods all let out surprised cries. In Greek mythology, the great hero Hercules was entrusted with 12 impossible tasks. In the end, he completed all of them and became a god. This was a story that everyone knew. Among the 12 tasks, one of them was to obtain the golden apple under the protection of the evil dragon Ladin. In the end, Hercules successfully killed the evil dragon Ladin, and obtained the golden apple. Therefore, Hercules should know best how to deal with Ladon. However, while all the gods were pleasantly surprised, Achuca pointed out the main point. Dealing with the evil dragon is not difficult. In fact, although the evil dragon is a threat, almost all of the gods here have the ability to kill it. The real problem is that even if the evil dragon is killed, it can continue to resurrect. It's not difficult to find a way to deal with the evil dragon. The key is to find a way to deal with the Holy Grail. His words woke her up from her dream. That's right. The real problem was the Holy Grail, not the evil dragon. If they didn't find a way to deal with the Holy Grail first, then even if they dealt with the evil dragon, it would be useless in the end. The Holy Grail is in the hands of the Demon King's little brat, right? Odin said thoughtfully. Sure enough, that Demon King's son is the real threat? Can you find a way to find Lesivim's whereabouts? Shiva said slowly. There shouldn't be anyone who knows the former Demon King's son better than the demons, angels and fallen angels, right? If we can find Lesivim smoothly, then we won't be so passive. Sazak's expression became serious. As early as after the turmoil of the vampires, we began to look for Lesivim. Unfortunately, until now we haven't found any clues. Speaking of which, aren't there still 2 holy grails with the fallen angels? Sakra glanced at Asashel. Governor of the fallen angels, can't you think of a way? It's easy to say. Asashel couldn't help but be speechless. If there is enough time, maybe we can get some results. The problem is that by that time it will be too late, right? All the gods suddenly frowned and fell into a dilemma. The key to the problem was Lesivim and the Holy Grail. But, how to find Lesivim and the Holy Grail? When heaven and the underworld were attacked, Lesivim didn't appear at all. He must be hiding in a safe place, watching the disasters and secretly laughing, right? That guy is really a bastard. At the same time, Asashel looked at Noah and asked, "Why haven't you said anything? Don't forget that you are the protagonist." Asashel's words made all the gods and Buddhas present focus on Noah. Under the gaze of all the gods, Noah opened his eyes that had been closed and said indifferently, "I'm just thinking, if I were Lesivim, I don't need to consider any consequences and want to eliminate all the mythical forces. Is there a shortcut to achieve this goal?" Noah's words made all the gods present stunned. Asashel. Noah ignored the stunned gods and suddenly asked, "If Lesivim is really as bad as you said, then it shouldn't be strange to let him attack the source of all the mysteries and achieve the goal of eliminating all the mythical forces, right?" The source of all the mysteries. Asashel was stunned, then seemed to realize something and gasped. You mean? That's what I was thinking." Noah narrowed his eyes. "Lesivim will act soon." With such a sentence, Noah stood up and looked around at all the gods present. "If I'm not wrong, Lesivim's next target is not any mythical force but humans. He will definitely eliminate humans." All the gods present almost instantly understood what Noah meant, and all of them showed a horrified expression. Chapter 1944. Annihilate humans. If Lesivim really did such a thing, then there was no doubt that he could easily annihilate all the mythical powers. Because humans were the root of all mysteries. At least that was the case in this world. Why could various mythical systems exist? Because of faith. If there was no faith, then no matter if it was a god or a Buddha, they would all die. Because of this, before the peace treaty was concluded, the various mythical powers would reject each other. Because the rest of the mythical powers were competitors for their faith. If it wasn't for the appearance of Noah, who laid the foundation for the peace treaty with his extremely tyrannical and overbearing strength, then it would be almost impossible for Asashel to achieve the peace treaty with all the mythical powers and usher in world peace. Not to mention other things, Shiva and Sakra had been competing for popularity since ancient times. Even if they reached a peace treaty, they were still secretly opposing each other, never stopping for a moment. From this, it could be seen how important faith was to a mythical power. Not to mention the rest of the mythical powers, even demons, angels and fallen angels had now fallen to the point where they couldn't survive without humans. Even vampires, if they didn't have human blood to survive sooner or later, they would also go on the road to extinction, no different from the other races and powers. Therefore, once humans really perished, no one would need to do anything. Sooner or later, all the mythical powers would go to extinction and completely disappear from human history. After fully understanding Lezavim from Asashel and Wali, coupled with their previous dealings, Noah had already placed himself in the role of Lezavim, while the gods were arguing endlessly over nonsense, and began to imagine himself in the role of Lezavim. If he was Lezavim, knowing the importance of humans and wanting to annihilate all the mythical powers, would he do something like annihilating all the humans? The answer, yes. Why didn't Lezavim attack the other powers? Or even the fallen angels, but only the angels and demons? Because angels and demons are easier to attack? Not necessarily, right? Noah said this when all the gods were shocked. Let's not talk about the angels for now. The demons have Sizax and Achuka. As surpassers who are as famous as Sizax and Achuka, it's impossible for Lezavim not to know how troublesome the two of them are. Instead of attacking the demons, why don't we attack the forces that don't have the top 10 powerhouses in the world, or simply continue to attack the heavily injured vampires? That would undoubtedly be easier to succeed, right? But Lezavim didn't. Instead, he still attacked the angels and demons. Noah looked around at all the gods. At first, I also wondered if Lezavim was unwilling to be expelled from the underworld as the son of the demon king, so he had evil intentions. Or perhaps it was because of his grudge with Sizax and Achuka that he attacked the demons. But in that case, how do you explain his attack on the angels? Now that I think about it, I suddenly feel that Lezavim must have some thoughts when he attacked the angels and demons. Noah knocked on the table. After all, angels and demons are now the races that have the most inseparable relationship with humans. In order to maintain the prosperity of the race, demons had long developed demon pawns with the technical support of Achuka, which could reincarnate creatures of other races into demons. Angels were lives created by the God of the Bible. After the God of the Bible passed away, they could no longer be increased. Therefore, after reaching a peace agreement, they relied on the reincarnation technology of demons to develop means to reincarnate people with deep faith into angels. In today's demon world and angel world, reincarnated people had become an indispensable part, and most of these reincarnated people were humans. Although Lezavim, this surpasser, is the crystallization of malice, I have to say that he's really a lousy guy. Noah curled his lips and smiled. When we were in the vampire's territory, he tried to seal off my trump card, but he neglected the uncontrollable nature of the evil dragon. This time he launched a sudden attack to divert our attention and make us think that he's planning to attack the various mythical organizations. While we're focused on defending ourselves, he'll be able to proudly attack the humans, right? It's just that the idiot who was occupied by the idea of attacking humans also chose the angels and demons that have the closest relationship with humans. This makes people feel that there's a trace. Noah looked at Athasil and said, just like how he instigated his son to abuse his grandson for fun, and even forbade his son from killing Varley. He never thought that after doing this, when Varley, the child who inherited the power of Lucifer and the White Dragon Emperor, grows up, that kind of hatred will pose a great threat to him. He's just a clown jumping around. In other words, although Lezavim's various malice would cause harm to others, it would also bury endless future troubles for himself every time. The son of the demon king who was immersed in the despair, pain and confusion of others only thought of enjoying everything. Like a drug addict, he would think of ways to pursue it all day long, but never thought that he was addicted to drugs. He could not achieve anything, but he was good at spoiling things. However, such a lousy guy obtained the Holy Grail, which caused all the disasters. Next, Lezavim's target of attack will be humans. What we should do is not to consider our own defense, but to set up a net in the human world and wait for him to jump in himself. Noah concluded with this sentence. This is my idea. Of course, it's only my idea. Everything is speculation. It's up to you to believe it or not. The overgods of the various organizations looked at one another when they heard that. They all fell silent. It had to be said that Noah's reasoning was reasonable and well-founded. He had completely unearthed the essence of Lezavim and reached a final conclusion. It was really persuasive. However, this was still only a speculation. If it was wrong, when all the forces were investing their strength in the human world, Lezavim would take advantage of the fact that their defenses were greatly lowered to attack the headquarters of the various forces. What would the consequences be then? It was unimaginable. This possibility was not non-existent. Under such consideration, the various forces really wanted to ignore this speculation and only care about their own safety just in case. However, if that was the case, when the humans were wiped out by Lezivim, they would only be digging their own graves. It was up to the various forces how to make the choice. I agree with Noah's decision. Asashel was the first to express his opinion. That bastard Lezivim will definitely do such a thing. Therefore, the fallen angels will put all their efforts into defense in the human world. After Asashel expressed his opinion, the 4 demon kings, Sazax, Achuka, Seraph and Felubium, looked at each other and nodded. The demons will also fully enter the human world to take precautions. The main gods of the various mythical forces hesitated. Sigh. Odin sighed and rubbed his shoulders. It seems that an old man like me will have to accompany you young people to play some exciting games. Norse mythology. Participate. That's true. Zeus grinned. We can't let the humans be wiped out. Greek mythology. Participate. You actually want me, a god of destruction, to do such a thing as protecting the humans? What a joke. Shiva mocked himself and then the corners of his mouth rose. But it's not my style to be a coward. Indian mythology. Participate. A group of gods are actually led by a little demon left behind by a demon king. That's outrageous. Indra's words were still sarcastic, but he also curled his lips. Forget it. Since we are gods, then we should do something to save the humans. Mount Meru. Participate. Seeing that the 4 most important mythical forces had announced their participation, the other main gods of the mythical forces began to struggle. In the end, they gritted their teeth and nodded heavily one after another. Egyptian mythology participates. Kettle mythology participates. Roman mythology participates. We will all participate. All the main gods expressed their opinions, making Sazax, Asashel, and the others laugh. Noah suddenly smiled and stood up. From now on, we will fully enter the war to protect the humans. Chapter 1945. The meeting lasted from noon until late at night. It was only when the sky began to brighten slightly that the door of the meeting hall opened. The main gods of the various mythical organizations brought their attendants and immediately activated the teleportation magic formation the moment they stepped out of the door, returning to their base camps. Next, what they needed to do was to arrange the tasks that were just assigned in the meeting, and at the same time, make preparations as much as possible so that they could face Lezivim and the evil dragon army in the human world. Of course, as a precaution, the various mythical organizations also made their own preparations to prevent Lezivim from directly attacking the mythical organizations. And all of this had to be done secretly. If Lezivim sensed that the human world had set up an inescapable defense, then that guy would definitely not appear again, or he would simply turn around and attack the various mythical organizations whose defenses were greatly reduced. If that happened, then it would be troublesome. Therefore, the defense of the human world had to be carried out quietly until the moment Lezivim appeared and dealt a fatal blow. After the main gods left the meeting hall one by one and returned to their base camps through the teleportation magic formation, Noah and the others slowly walked out. Then we'll also go back and make preparations. Sazax turned his head and looked at Noah. If there's anything, just contact us directly. Yes, Seraphil said with a smile. You should have our contact information in that phone of yours. Don't be shy, try to contact us as much as you can. Got it. Noah nodded. Go on with your work. The 4 demon kings, Sazax, Achuka, Seraphil and Felubium immediately activated the teleportation magic formation and left the meeting hall under the watchful eyes of Noah and Asashel. At the same time, a god walked out of the meeting hall and came to Noah. To be honest, I'd like to have a fight with you. As soon as he came in front of Noah, the most famous god of destruction in Hindu mythology, Shiva, looked straight at Noah and said such a sentence. In this world there aren't many people who can threaten me, and I've never challenged any of them before. You're one of the most outstanding people among them. If I can destroy you, it will be very interesting, right? His words made Arthashel's expression turn serious. Orpheus and Lilith, who had been quietly following Noah, raised their heads and looked at Shiva with their dark eyes. Just this alone was enough to cause a wave of pressure to fill the air. However, Shiva was not surprised. Instead, he was happy. He looked at Orpheus and Lilith with joy. the infinite dragon god, who had always stood aloof from worldly affairs and was uninterested in anything no matter how much one provoked him, actually had such a reaction because of a human. Just being able to see this scene is enough to make me sigh. There are indeed benefits to living for so long. Shiva looked at Noah and said, "Don't worry, I won't trouble you at a time like this. I just hope that one day you can agree to my request and play with me." Hearing this, Noah looked at Shiva's burning eyes and said indifferently, "Sure. Anytime." Shiva smiled in satisfaction. He turned around and disappeared from where he stood. There was no sign of him moving at all. "Do you really want to fight with that god of destruction?" Arthashel could not help but ask. He is the most powerful god besides the real Red Dragon Emperor and the infinite dragon god. Even Sakura, who is known as the most powerful martial god, doesn't want to confront him directly. In the era when the real Red Dragon Emperor and the infinite dragon god don't appear, he is the most powerful. If the two of you fight, won't the world be turned upside down? Hearing Arthashel's words, Noah did not have time to answer before a mocking laugh sounded. At least, compared to playing with the little devil left behind by the former Demon King, the play between the Godslayer and the God of Destruction should be more attractive, right? With that, Sakura walked out of the venue. Even if he is a Godslayer, he is still a human after all. His life is limited, unlike a god. As long as there are no accidents, there wouldn't be any problem even if he lived until the end of the world. Sakura came in front of Noah and looked at him closely as he grinned. Leaving behind endless glory in a limited time. That's how humans have always lived. Every human who can challenge the gods will leave behind glory that coexists with history. You don't want to die in obscurity, do you? Arthashel shut his mouth. Orpheus and Lilith also became silent. Only Noah met Sakura's gaze and said this with a lukewarm tone. "Do you think you know humans very well?" "I don't know them well, I should say that I have seen a lot. After living for so many years, what kind of humans have I not seen?" Sakura shook his head and said, "I just want to remind you that holding power that doesn't belong to humans and making all gods revere you is indeed amazing. But doesn't it mean that if you are stronger, then everyone will be at your mercy?" With that said, Sakura looked at Noah with a completely different expression than Shiva. If it was said that Shiva's gaze towards Noah was filled with burning fighting intent, then Sakura's gaze towards Noah was filled with boundless ambition. Then Deshurtion left behind such a sentence. "Don't underestimate a god." After saying that, Deshurtion passed by Noah's figure and gradually disappeared like a cloud of mist. That attitude was simply arrogant to the extreme. However, Noah and Arthashel looked at each other. One curled his lips and laughed, the other gloated. "It seems that guy is really afraid of you," Arthashel said. "He actually couldn't help but say these words of bravado in front of you. That doesn't seem like something a guy called the strongest Einherjar would do." Noah shrugged and didn't say anything. On the contrary, Arthashel's expression suddenly became serious and said such a piece of news. "Do you know? The people of the Hero Sect have actually become Sakura's vanguard." "Hero Sect?" Noah was slightly startled and said in surprise. "Those guys were released by you?" "It should be said that they were all softened by Sakura," Arthashel said helplessly. "After you showed your skills last time, Sakura requested to meet with a few people of the Hero Sect. Later, he asked to release them, intending to take those descendants of heroes under his command and work for him. In the end, you agreed just like that." Noah was speechless. "Really generous. There are 3 holders of the God's Extinguishment Tool in the Hero Sect, right? In fact, Sakura came for Cao Cao, Galgar, and Leonardo, the 3 holders of the God's Extinguishment Tool." Arthashel spread out his hands. "If it was in the past, of course we wouldn't agree to let them go so easily and be used by that ambitious guy who wants to defeat Shiva all day long. But with you as a restraint, Sakura can't make any waves. We just went with the flow and let Sakura owe us a big favor. However, now it seems that Sakura didn't take Cao Cao, Galgar, and Leonardo under his command just to increase his combat power to deal with Shiva." Arthashel looked at Noah with some worry. "That guy, it's very likely that because of your appearance, he had the idea of taking the God's Extinguishment Tool from the Hero Sect." After all, the only weakness of Noah who could use another cosmology was humans. Only humans could defeat Noah. Sakura probably wanted to rely on Cao Cao, Galgar, and Leonardo to restrain Noah, right? In this regard, Noah's eyes flashed and the corner of his mouth rose. Chow Chow is indeed a talent. Even God and Demon King can't ignore him. But since he couldn't win against me before, it's impossible for him to win against me in the future. As for the other two, it's not a big deal. Let Sakura torment them however he wants. With that, Noah waved at Arthashel and left the scene with Orpheus and Lilith. That kid. Arthashel shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, but the corner of his mouth rose. I hope Sakura has some self-awareness. Otherwise, provoking that monster will be the end of Mount Meru. Chapter 1946. After leaving the venue, Noah brought Orpheus and Lilith to the Jumanli's house. Only there could Noah use the teleportation magic circle that connected to the Supernatural Research Department to return to the human world. Although the Jumanli family was currently dealing with the aftermath of the chaos in the demon realm, and was temporarily not at the Jumanli's house, the magic circle was fixed and directly engraved in Lilith's room. Noah only needed to inject magic power into it to be able to use it. However, halfway through, Noah suddenly stopped. Orpheus and Lilith immediately stopped in their tracks as though they had sensed something. Noah looked up slightly and suddenly spoke. Orpheus, Lilith, go to the gift card first and find Aster and Athena to accompany you. I have something to deal with for the time being. After Asashel's transformation, the environment in the gift card had changed greatly. It was as if it was located in a resort, and there was almost everything that could be enjoyed. With Orpheus, Lilith, Aster, and Athena as companions, there was no need to be afraid of loneliness and boredom. Moreover, after Asashel's transformation, Noah did not need to take out the gift card at any time. Any existence that had a contract with Noah could return to the gift card that Noah had stored in his body at any time with just a thought. Therefore, Orpheus and Lilith both looked up and glanced at Noah. Orpheus said without rhyme or reason, "He's very tricky." "I know," Noah replied without looking back. "But I can handle it." Orpheus nodded, held Lilith's hand, and didn't say anything else. Immediately, the two dragon gods turned into a burst of light particles and disappeared into the air. Only Noah was left at the scene. No, there was another person. A black-robed young man who had appeared out of nowhere and was leaning against a rock. His pair of different-colored eyes, one gold and one black, were staring at Noah without moving away for a moment. Surprisingly, it was Klon Kvoch. What a surprise! Noah looked straight ahead. "And here I thought that you would continue to train like before after leaving the disaster." "That's what I did," Klon Kovac said without hiding anything. "It's just that I won't stay in one place forever. Training is only one of my goals. I have another purpose." Noah narrowed his eyes. "Observation dragon?" "That's right." Klon Kovacs nodded. "Where there are dragons, there will be me." "That's just like you." Noah sounded like he had known Klon Kovac for a long time. "Then, did you come to the underworld because there are dragons here?" "There are many dragons who reincarnate as demons. There are even many dragons who reincarnate as demons and live in the underworld. The human world is no longer suitable for dragons to live in, so compared to the human world, the underworld is more attractive to me." Klon Kovac seemed to become talkative when it came to dragons. "In the past, I came to the underworld many times and saw many dragons here. Their way of life interested me, but I still don't understand what a dragon is." Saying this, Klon Kovac propped himself up and stopped leaning against the rock, facing Noah. "In the past, the two heavenly dragons were also my targets of observation," Klon Kovac said. "But they didn't care about me at all. They just kept fighting. Even after they were killed and their souls were sealed in the divine artifact, they kept fighting. I don't understand. As heavenly dragons, they are only second to the dragon god. Why do they keep fighting? Are they real dragons?" Klon Kovac seemed to be reminiscing about something as he kept talking. "It's not just the two heavenly dragons. Most of the other dragons like to fight, even I am no exception. Gods, humans, demons, and other existences even call dragons the aggregation of power. Since that's the case, is displaying power the essence of a dragon? But if that's the case, why doesn't the dragon god Orpheus fight with anyone? Why does he only watch the development of the world quietly? Why does the real emperor god Crimson Dragon only want to fly in the dimensional gap?" Klon Kovac shook his head. As the top existences of the dragon tribe, the infinite dragon god and the emperor god Crimson Dragon are different from other dragons. They don't display their power at all. So, which one is the real dragon? At this point, Crone Kuvaka's tone became unprecedentedly persistent. I want to know this. I want to know what a dragon is. For this, no matter how long it takes, I will continue to observe. What is a dragon? This was Clone Kuvaka's persistence. Getting the answer to this question could be said to be the meaning of Clone Kuvaka's long life. Deshirtian was right about one thing. Human life is short. So humans will pursue glory in their limited lives, hoping to leave behind traces to prove their existence after they die. Compared to humans, the lives of gods, demons, dragons, and other existences were too long. If they were like humans and did everything they wanted to do in less than 100 years, then how would they live for thousands of years? By that time, wouldn't they be walking corpses? So demons, angels, fallen angels, and even Asura gods and Buddhas had their own persistence. That was the meaning of their survival. Lias wanted to become the king of the ranked game. Song wanted to build a school that anyone could enter to teach the ranked game. Indra wanted to defeat Shiva. Shiva wanted to show all of the god of destruction. Even the 4 demon kings had the goal of changing the demons and making them prosper again. Asashal wanted world peace, and everyone's goal was very distant. And Clone Kuvak wanted to know what a dragon was. You have made a contract with the dragon god, right? Clone Kuvak said. You can attract Orpheus and Lilith, and you are the Red Dragon Emperor who is different from the previous generations. Can you show me the real dragon? Noah was silent. This question was simply unsolvable. In the eyes of 1,000 people, there were 1,000 hamlets. In the eyes of different people, dragons were also different existences. Humans generally believed that demons were evil creatures. However, in reality, there were kind and gentle demons like Jamanli's kin, and there were also evil demons like Lezavim. Just like how there were good and evil humans, one could not directly give an absolute definition. It was the same for dragons. Because of this, even if Clone Kuvak had survived from the mythological era until now, he still couldn't find an answer. Under such circumstances, Noah suddenly opened his mouth. In the past, there was a time when I thought that humans were simply hopeless. They were a group of people who wore human skin on the surface, but hid darkness in their hearts. Noah's sudden words made Clone Kuvak stunned. However, Noah was already immersed in his memories. Recalling what he experienced in the world of Black Bullet, Noah let out a sigh. At that time, humans were facing a disaster. But in the face of the disaster, they showed an unimaginable ugly side. In order to survive, adults didn't hesitate to let a group of children die. Even before the disaster arrived, it was as if they gave up everything, burning, killing, robbing, and committing all kinds of evil. Noah slightly clenched his fist. His voice had a rare murderous aura and anger. At that time, I really thought that humans were simply hopeless. I even had the thought of personally wiping out all the humans in that world to prevent the ugliness of human nature from spreading. After saying this, Noah bitterly laughed. However, in the end, I still gave up and even saved those humans. Upon hearing this, Clone Kuvak asked almost instinctively, why? Because even if some people really deserved to die, there were still people who were worth saving. Noah suddenly smiled. Humans are such contradictory existences. I think dragons are the same. Therefore, I really can't answer your question. Clone Kuvak once again fell silent. After a while, Clone Kuvak raised his head and looked at Noah, saying, You're right. Let's have a fight. Hearing this, Noah didn't hesitate this time. Okay. Chapter 1947. In the dark sky, traces of light began to appear, and dawn gradually arrived. Under the slightly brightening sky, 2 figures slowly floated up into the sky. They only came to a stop when they were above the clouds. Clone Kuvak opened and closed his palm, and a crisp sound like bone and flesh rubbing against each other echoed in the air. It was not hard to imagine how powerful that palm was. At the same time, Clone Kuvak's gaze was fixed on Noah, and what emerged from within was no longer confusion and stubbornness, but a surging fighting spirit. It was just like what Clone Kuvak had said. Other than the Red Dragon Emperor and the Infinite Dragon God, the other dragons were all competitive masters. Even the Dark Dragon known as the New Moon, and the strongest evil dragon Clone Kuvak were like that. In order to have a better battle, Clone Kuwak had even acted together with the disaster squad and followed the rest of the evil dragons into the vampire world with less of him. It was not hard to imagine that Clone Kuwak was definitely a battle maniac no less than Varley. Therefore, almost at the same time when his fighting spirit was boiling, Clone Kuwak completely forgot his previous purpose. The reason why Clone Kuwak wanted to fight with Noah was to see what this unprecedented Red Dragon Emperor would show him, and to see if he could get some answers to the questions in his heart. However, as soon as the battle began, Clone Kuwak suddenly forgot his purpose and wholeheartedly devoted himself to the battle. I have already fought with the White Dragon Emperor of the 2 heavenly dragons. Clone Kuwak's voice rang out. This time let me see what you, the Red Dragon Emperor of the 2 heavenly dragons, will show me. As soon as his voice fell, clang! A burst of thick black light burst out from Clone Kuwak's body and instantly covered his entire body. In the dense light, the black robe on Clone Kuwak's body directly exploded, and his body suddenly expanded. At a speed visible to the naked eye, he rapidly grew stronger. Not long after, a huge dragon with a pitch-black luster appeared in the air amidst the thick, pitch-black light. It stared at Noah with a pair of different colored eyes, one gold and one black. The ferocious dragon suddenly raised its head. Roar, 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 roar. A storm-like roar reverberated from the pitch-black evil dragon's mouth and turned into rolling sound waves that blew in all directions. Noah's robe flapped by the storm-like sound waves, but his body was as steady as a mountain. He looked at Clone Kuwak, who had turned into a huge black dragon, and said softly, "Are you going to use your full strength from the start?" Not sure if it heard Noah's whisper, Clone Kuwak, who let out a violent roar, grinned sinisterly and said so. "After all, we've already greeted each other last time." "That's true." Noah suddenly smiled. "If that's the case, then I'll also be serious from the start." After saying that, Noah raised one of his arms. Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. Under Noah's command, the scarlet red boosted gear burst out in a flash, and a ferocious dragon claw-like protective gear covered Noah's arm. "Drake," Noah said softly. "Go. Then use your full strength." "Partner." Drake's voice sounded from the boosted gear. "Let the strongest evil dragon witness our full power as the Scarlet Dragon Emperor." Obviously, Drake's fighting spirit had been ignited. At that moment, Noah smiled faintly and raised his arm that was covered by the scarlet red boosted gear. Balance breaker. The boosted gear inlaid on the back of the boosted gear suddenly released a dazzling light. Accompanied by a muffled explosion, a violent wave of scarlet air burst out from Noah's body and turned into a scarlet dragon shadow. Like a mirage, it stacked on top of Noah's body. The scarlet red boosted gear that was shining with a dazzling light was instantly disintegrated and turned into illusory scales that merged into the dragon shadow. The scales on the mirage-like dragon shadow became extremely clear and lifelike. It was like a small red dragon, emitting a terrifying aura. That aura continued to soar, rising at a frightening rate. In just an instant it was evenly matched with Clone Kuwak. In fact, there was even a faint trace of it surpassing the latter. Feeling the suffocating pressure, Clone Kuwak was not shocked but delighted. What a refreshing dragon wave. Undoubtedly, it's only a balance breaker, but it's already as powerful as the White Dragon Emperor's extreme tyrannical dragon. Even without using a divine artifact, Noah had now reached a 4-digit level. With a solid foundation, Noah's strength naturally increased explosively when using the boosted gear. He was now comparable to the top 10 masters in the world. So, unlike Wally, who only has the strength of a sky dragon, I have the strength of a real sky dragon. Noah, whose body was swelling with scarlet air, raised his eyes and stared at Clone Kuwak. His astonishing aura kept rising. "If you don't take this seriously, you'll die." Hearing this, Clone Kuwak did not say anything. He grinned, and the dragon power turned into a pitch-black flame that kept rising from his body. Roar, 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 roar. The next moment, Clone Kuwak let out a roar that shook the air. The pitch-black flame that was rising around him suddenly started to rotate like a pitch-black tornado. The tornado was not large at first, but with the support of the violent dragon power, it expanded to hundreds of meters in the blink of an eye. High up in the clouds, a pitch-black tornado spun madly, forcefully stirring up the clouds below, turning them into a whirlpool, twisting and turning. Looking at the huge tornado, Noah let out a low roar. The endless energy in his body instantly turned into divine power and surged into Noah's raised arm. Hum! Suddenly, a bright light flashed above Noah's raised arm, condensing into a spear of light that gradually expanded. Boost, 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 boost. A voice that symbolized the multiplication of power rang out from the scarlet dragon shadow on Noah's body. As the voice rang out, the spear of light shone brightly and crazily expanded. In an instant it was like a pillar of light that connected the heavens and the earth, illuminating the whole world. Immediately, as if their hearts were connected, Noah and Klon Kuwak moved at the same time. Hum! The huge pitch-black tornado, with an ear-piercing buzzing sound, swept toward Noah crazily. Wherever the storm passed, the clouds below were all torn apart and sucked into it. Like a cloud of fog, they lingered around the pitch-black tornado. Even Noah's robe billowed crazily under the sweeping of the tornado. However, there was no fear in Noah's eyes. Looking at the terrifying pitch-black tornado that was sweeping toward him, Noah's eyes sharpened. With a shake of his arm, he threw out the giant spear of light that was like a pillar that supported the sky. Swoosh! The instant the sharp sound of air being split apart appeared, the enormous light spear that illuminated the entire place shot out explosively. It drew a straight meteor-like trajectory in the air and disappeared in a flash as it rushed towards the wild and violent dark black tornado. On one side was a tornado that was as violent as flames. On the other side was a spear of light that was as dazzling as the sun. The two behemoths instantly closed the distance between them. Then they collided with a loud bang. At the moment of collision, the world suddenly became silent. Accompanied by a roar, a terrifying shockwave spread out in the sky, wreaking havoc in a frenzy. The pitch-black tornado and the bright spear of light fiercely collided, releasing a terrifying power that caused the space to ripple slightly. Then, the tornado and the spear of light bloomed with a dazzling light and exploded with a loud bang. Chapter 1948. Boom! When an earth-shattering roar resounded in the sky, it was as if a star had exploded. The dazzling light and violent impact turned into the most terrifying ripples of power that fluctuated in the entire sky, scattering the clouds below and even shaking the space. In the dazzling light, a crimson streamer rode on the violent impact and quickly slid back like a sailboat sailing on the sea in a storm. Feeling the terrifying ripples of power that came head-on, Noah used all his strength to maintain his forbidden hand, and let the air scales resist the ripples of power so that they would not affect him. If the advantage of Chow Chow's forbidden hand was that it could cope with all kinds of situations, then the advantage of Noah's forbidden hand was its defensive power. With the ability of the air scales, the defensive power of Noah's forbidden hand was many times stronger than the original forbidden hand. Even with the terrifying ripples of power, it was still able to resist them as usual. Without the air scales, Noah could only convert his divine power into magic power, and use Crush to resist the impact in order to not be injured. Now he did not need to go through so much trouble. All of it was blocked by the solid air scales. However, even if the air scales blocked the terrifying ripples of power, the violent impact still did not subside. At this moment, Noah's perception ability suddenly transmitted a warning sign, causing his eyes to harden. He abruptly lifted his head and looked to the front. Amidst the violent impact and dazzling light, a giant black dragon flapped the wings on its back. Its huge body was like a bolt of black lightning, and it instantly passed through the layers of power ripples. Amidst the faint sound of breaking through the air, it darted in front of Noah. Even Noah had to use the air scales to resist the ripples of power. Cloned Kuwak rushed over just like that. The scales on its body were already covered with cracks like cracked glass. Blood even seeped out and dyed its body red. However, Clone Kua ignored his injuries as if he couldn't feel any pain at all. He rushed to Noah's front and stared at Noah with a pair of eyes, one gold and one black. His eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Immediately after, Clone Kua raised his hand, and a sharp dragon claw swept out, bringing with it a whistling wind. It fluctuated with a rich black dragon power, and like a cold blade light, it slashed across. Clang! The sharp dragon claws that were as cold as a blade light slashed across the crimson air scales, causing a crisp sound of metal clashing and leaving a mark on the crimson dragon shadow. Roar! Cloned Kuwak roared. After its attack failed, it suddenly exploded. Its two huge dragon claws brought along a burst of black light, as it violently tore apart the obstruction of the air. With an ear-piercing sound, it was like a violent storm as it slashed towards Noah. Clang, 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 clang. The sharp dragon claws fell on the crimson air scales like raindrops. Not only did it cause a series of chaotic clashing sounds, but it also set off a series of air explosions and shockwaves that appeared continuously in midair. The terrifying force fell on the air scales one after another. Although it did not hurt Noah, it made Noah feel as if he had been hit hard. His body could not help but be pushed back and was shaken away again and again. Cloned Kuwak seemed to have transformed into a meat grinder. It relentlessly chased after Noah and waved its claws like a storm, shaking the air scales of Noah again and again. Crack! At a certain moment, a crisp cracking sound was heard. A crack finally appeared on Noah's air scales and was clearly imprinted in Cloned Kuwak's eyes. However, this time Cloned Kuwak was not happy. Instead, he was shocked. This was because Noah did not attempt to counterattack in the storm of attacks. Instead, he allowed Cloned Kuwak to attack fiercely. His pitch-black eyes were fixed on a scale below Cloned Kuwak's neck. Under the impact of the energy ripples just now, Cloned Kuwak's dragon scales were almost all cracked. Only that dragon scale was intact and its color was deeper than the rest. At this moment, Noah allowed Cloned Kuwak to attack fiercely. His eyes were fixed on that dragon scale. Divine power surged in his hands and a dazzling light condensed within it. Cloned Kuwak knew that Noah could use a power similar to the light power of angels and fallen angels. And that power was now frantically condensing. His target was the only unbroken dragon scale of Cloned Kuwak. Cloned Kuwak understood. His weakness had been seen through. Just like how snakes had a weakness of 7 inches, dragons, which were closely related to snakes, also had a weakness to a certain extent. In Cloned Kuwak's case, that was the dragon scale. Once that dragon scale was pierced, Cloned Kuwak would not die, but he would lose control of his power for a short period of time. Even though Cloned Kuwak had reached the level of a heavenly dragon after a long period of training, he had only overcome this weakness to a certain extent. He had not completely overcome it. Once that dragon scale was broken, Cloned Kuwak would still be unable to use his power for a second. In front of a heavenly dragon rank opponent, this 1 second was the most fatal weakness. Cloned Kuwak roared again and stopped his fierce attacks. His huge body suddenly moved and directly crashed into Noah. Bang! Amidst the muffled sounds, the violent force suddenly sent Noah flying backward. Due to the friction with the air, he was forced to retreat a distance of several hundred meters. Beautiful! Noah could not help but praise. Under the protection of the air scale, Noah did not suffer any harm. However, Cloned Kuwak's attack was not meant to attack Noah. It was only meant to send Noah flying and increase the distance between him and Noah to avoid being attacked at a weak point. Unfortunately, Noah was not to be trifled with. The moment he was sent flying by Cloned Kuwak, Noah resolutely released the divine power that he had been gathering in his hand. A burst of bright brilliance suddenly appeared and abruptly contracted into a cone shape. It carried a terrifying energy, and like a drill breaking through the sky, it shot towards Cloned Kuwak's direction. The speed of the cone of light was extremely terrifying. It was almost like a flash. In just a flash, it was already not far from Kuwa's body. Moreover, it was spinning at an extremely fast speed. With a terrifying penetrative force, it directly hit the undamaged dragon scales below Kuwa's neck. "It's not that easy," Cloned Kuwak growled. His body suddenly surged with an astonishing amount of dragon power. Like a slowly burning flame, it spun at a high speed in a spiral shape and enveloped Cloned Kuwak's entire body. Dong! The crazily spinning light cone fell directly on the flaming vortex-like dragon power and heavily collided with each other, causing a deafening collision sound to reverberate. In the end, under the resistance of the flaming vortex-like dragon power, the light cone was actually blocked and was in a deadlock. Gee! The sharp light cone spun crazily and crazily collided with the pitch-black flaming vortex, causing an ear-piercing sound that was like glass being scraped continuously, piercing one's eardrums. Roar, 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 roar! Cloned Kuwak roared towards the sky, causing the dragon power in his body to expand to the maximum limit, directly covering the dazzling light cone. Under the suppression of the pitch-black flame-like dragon power, the light cone finally trembled abruptly, dimmed little by little, and finally was gradually annihilated. However, before cloned Kuwak could heave a sigh of relief, a chain of light suddenly swept over. Before cloned Kuwak could react, it wrapped around his body and tightly bound him within. Then the chain of light tightened fiercely and directly pulled cloned Kuwak, who was caught off guard, forward. There, Noah tightly held the chain of light in one hand and tightly clenched his other hand into a fist. The crimson air waves on his body surged violently. Boost, 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 boost. The chaotic voice reverberated in the air. Noah's tightly clenched fist fiercely punched out, completely disrupting the atmosphere. Chapter 1949. Bang! Accompanied by a heavy thunder-like muffled sound, a huge black dragon in the sky immediately turned into a falling meteor. Like a meteor, it streaked across the sky and directly hit the ground. Dong! The moment the giant black dragon smashed into the ground, the entire ground seemed to be shaken. It trembled a few times, raising a thick cloud of dust and setting off a powerful gale. It swept across like a typhoon, instantly covering an area of thousands of meters. As for the spot where the collision occurred, the ground directly caved in, as if it had really been hit by a meteorite. It suddenly collapsed, stirring up pieces of rubble, causing a huge crater to appear on the ground. This huge commotion even alarmed the demons in the nearby cities, and they were all in an uproar. The underworld would not cause earthquakes or natural disasters. After all, after reaching the level of the highest demons, their own strength could already be considered natural disasters. Therefore, this huge commotion immediately attracted the attention of all the alarmed evil demons. Most likely, there were two rather terrifying powerhouses fighting nearby, which was why the commotion was so intense. Therefore, in each city, the demons began to consider whether or not to contact the enforcers. At the same time, in that huge crater, the giant black dragon, whose scales were cracked, struggled to stand up from the ground. Large amounts of blood continuously flowed out of his ferocious dragon mouth. It was obvious that he had suffered an unimaginable injury. At least, Clon Kuwak felt as if there was lava flowing in his body. It was as if his internal organs were being burned, sending a shocking pain. That intense pain made Clon Kuwak's head feel as if it was being scalded. He became muddled and couldn't stop coughing out mouthfuls of blood. How could this be? Clon Kuwak muttered to himself in disbelief as he coughed out blood. Just one punch and I'm injured to this extent? Although Clon Kuwak's scales weren't as tough as Glendale's, it wasn't something that could be broken by just anyone. However, at this time Clon Kuwak's scales were like decorations, completely useless, causing him to be seriously injured. In this situation, Clon Kovacs could only think of one possibility. Could it be the Dragon Slayer? As soon as Crown Quach's voice sounded, Noah's voice responded. That strike earlier did indeed contain the dragon kill. Noah slowly descended from the sky, floating in front of Clon Quach. His entire body was shrouded in a crimson flame. Noah spoke softly as he looked at Clon Quach in the crater. My Forbidden Hand is a subspecies of Forbidden Hand. Other than the original Forbidden Hand ability of the Red Dragon Emperor, it also has an extremely powerful defensive power and dragon kill power. The reason why Noah's Forbidden Hand was a subspecies of Forbidden Hand was because the artificial artifact recreated the state when the artifact fused with the embodiment of authority. After fusing with the divine artifact, Noah's Dragon Emperor avatar had 5 effects. 1. It could transform the body into a dragon's physique, possessing strength comparable to that of a giant dragon. 2. It could possess the dragon kill power that was highly lethal to dragon-type creatures. 3. It could obtain astonishing defensive power, comparable to the immortal body. 4. It could possess close combat ability that surpass wildness and intuition, and could be called a divine skill. 5. It could obtain the ability to multiply and transfer. Now, Noah's authority was sublimating, but the artificial artifact recreated the ability when it fused with the gauntlet. As a result, once the Forbidden Hand was used, other than the 4th ability of close combat, Noah's 4th avatar, the Dragon Emperor, could recreate the rest of the abilities. Physical strength comparable to that of a giant dragon. Dragon kill power used against dragons. Astonishing defensive power of air scales. Multiplication and transfer. Therefore, once he used the Forbidden Hand, Noah was equivalent to using the avatar of the Dragon Emperor. After stacking with the 4-digit level of strength, he rushed to the Sky Dragon level in one go. In addition, the artificial artifact also recreated Drake's third ability, when he was alive, penetration. Once Noah used the Forbidden Hand, the upgrade was even more terrifying than when Cao Cao used the Forbidden Hand. Cao Cao's Forbidden Hand was superior in its variety of abilities. Although Noah did not have as many as 7 types of Forbidden Hand abilities, it was an overall improvement in strength, defense, and ability. In that attack just now, not only did I use Dragon Kill, but I also used Transfer. I used all the multiplied strength to amplify the effect of Dragon Kill, and I also added Penetration. It directly ignored the defense of your scales and caused damage to you. Noah looked straight at Clone Kuwak. Multiplication, Transfer, and Penetration. The 3 abilities of the Red Dragon Emperor were used in that punch just now. In addition to Dragon Kill as the purest dragon, you're lucky that you didn't die directly. It would be strange if you could get up. Of course, Noah did not say that although he used the 4 abilities of Multiplication, Transfer, Penetration, and Dragon Kill, he did not use them to their limits. It should be said that the ability of Multiplication was not used to its limits. Just now, Noah could actually multiply his strength 3 more times. If he multiplied it 3 more times and used the Transfer ability to amplify Dragon Kill, as well as the Penetration ability that ignored the defensive scales, that attack would definitely be able to kill Clone Kuwak. In other words, Noah did not multiply his strength to its limits. That attack just now could be considered as Noah being merciful. That was why Clone Kuwak did not die. Clone Kuwak did not know this. However, there was one thing that Clone Kuwak knew. That was, he really could not continue to fight. Understanding this, Clone Kuwak stopped struggling and looked at Noah in a daze. After a while he said this. I want to ask you a question. Noah did not reply. He only looked at Clone Kuwak and asked silently. Seeing this, Clone Kuwak asked. The White Dragon Emperor who inherited Lucifer's blood developed the Tyrannosaurus without any side effects. Then, as the Red Dragon Emperor who is famous for being a godslayer, did you also do the same thing? Noah suddenly became silent. And this silence made Clone Kuwak understand. Is that so? Clone Kuwak seemed to have received the answer and closed his eyes. I lost. As his voice fell, Clone Kuwak's body began to shrink. From the pitch-black dragon form, he returned to his human form. As expected of the host of the Red Dragon Emperor, Drake, who is known as the crystallization of power, Clone Kuwak said without any regret. You've shown me the might of a heavenly dragon, Yizichin said with a smile. Actually, Clone Kuwak knew this. Noah's strongest weapon was not the divine weapon, but the power that everyone knew was unique to the Godslayer, the simulated star Atlas, another cosmology. Clone Kuwak was not a human, but a dragon. If Noah used the simulated star Atlas, another cosmology, he would be able to easily defeat Clone Kuwak. However, Clone Kuwak wanted to see the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, not the power of the Godslayer. Noah clearly understood this, so he used the best method to respond to Clone Kuwak. Unfortunately, I did not get the answer. Clone Kuwak looked at the sky. What exactly is a dragon? Hearing that, Noah slowly landed in front of Clone Kuwak. He looked at the strongest evil dragon lying in front of him and said calmly, if you don't understand, then just keep thinking. Keep thinking. Clone Kuwak repeated Noah's words. Yes, keep thinking. Noah smiled. After all, this is the biggest thing in your life. If you get the answer so easily, wouldn't it be boring? Clone Kuwak was stunned for a moment, then he suddenly smiled. Yes. Clone Kuwak smiled. That's true. After that, Clone Kuwak ignored the pain in his body and forced himself to stand up. Being able to stand up after just a short rest, although this guy had a different kind of stubbornness compared to the other dragons, he was still an evil dragon. Looking at Clone Kuwak like this, Noah suddenly felt that although this guy was an evil dragon, he was very much to his liking. Therefore, Noah spoke almost instinctively. Hey, do you want to come to our side? The sudden words made Clone Kuwak stunned on the spot. Chapter 1950. On this day, the sky was clear and there wasn't even a cloud in the sky. It could be said that the weather was very good. On the boundless ocean, waves were stacked on top of each other. Although it wasn't turbulent, it set off waves that made people feel relaxed and happy. Seagulls were crying in the air. Waves were surging in the ocean. Coupled with the cloudless weather and the beautiful scenery of the sea and sky, if possible, many people would want to drive a cruise ship and have a vacation under such beautiful scenery, right? However, at a certain moment, this beautiful scenery was ruthlessly destroyed. Clank! A huge magic array suddenly flashed on the surface of the sea, blooming with dazzling light. It was a teleportation magic array. Moreover, it was a large-scale teleportation magic array. In the unique light of the teleportation magic array, a black tide emerged. No, that wasn't a black tide. It was a beast tide formed by pitch-black dragons. Dragons exuding an ominous and evil aura flew out from the teleportation magic array. Like a tide, the dragons surged out and covered the surrounding area in an instant. From afar it looked like a huge black cloud. And in front of the black clouds, there were dragons that were completely different from the rest of the dragons. However, there were two people in front of the dragons that were clearly different from the rest of the dragons. Two men with silver hair that shone in the sun. "We're here." Euclid looked around and said faintly, "Lord Lesavim, we've arrived at the human world." "Not bad, not bad." Lesavim showed a very unpleasant smile. "After the work is over, I'll apply for a reward for your hard work." "Unfortunately, I don't get paid for my work," Euclid said expressionlessly. "Lord Lesavim, you don't have to worry." Aya. Lesavim didn't realize that he was talking nonsense and said very casually, "That's a pity." While Lesavim was wrangling, Glendale spoke up impatiently. "Cut the crap. Hurry up and attack. I can't wait to fight with the powerful guys." That's right. Nidhogg also shouted. "I can't wait to eat good food too." Although Radon, Apophis and Az Dahaka did not say anything, their eyes were filled with impatience. Looking at this scene, Lesavim's face twitched with a nasty smile, and he cursed in his heart. During this period of time, Lesavim was almost driven mad by these evil dragons. Not only did they fight with me every time, but they also couldn't be controlled. If it weren't for Lesavim controlling the Holy Grail and being able to stop the Holy Grail's power at any time, and let these evil dragons return to the earth, I believe that these evil dragons would have already run away. Of course, Lesavim couldn't wait for these evil dragons to die. As the son of the Demon King, Lesavim couldn't even remember how many years it had been since he was angered like this. The last time he was so angry was when Sazax and Achuka chased the old Demon King to the border of the underworld and forced him to flee. Now, this wasn't the first time Lesavim was angered by these uncontrollable evil dragons. With Lesavim's temperament, how could he tolerate it? If it weren't for the fact that he needed these legendary dragons as his fighting force, Lesavim really wanted to use the power of the Holy Grail to transform these evil dragons into caterpillars. When everything is settled, I'll definitely let you know what happens to disobedient children. Lesavim thought to himself, but he could only force a smile on his face. Lord Glendale, Lord Nidhogg, Radon, Lord Apophis, Az Dahaka. Everyone, don't be anxious. The fun stuff is yet to come. Lesavim tried his best to pacify these evil dragons. It couldn't be helped. Lesavim didn't tell the evil dragons that the main purpose of this operation was to annihilate the humans. If he told the evil dragons that the purpose of this operation was to attack the defenseless humans and destroy the mythical forces one by one, these evil dragons definitely wouldn't agree. What the evil dragons wanted was a battle that could make their blood boil. They didn't want to torture and kill defenseless humans. They could kill humans to anger their opponents. They could also wreak havoc in order to lure their opponents out. However, they definitely wouldn't use underhanded methods to indirectly destroy their opponents. If they knew the purpose of Lesavim's operation, the evil dragons would definitely turn against him immediately. That was why Lesavim only told the evil dragons that the main purpose of this operation was to kill the human god Slayer. In other words, Lesavim was telling the evil dragons that their opponent this time wasn't the mythical forces, but the god Slayer. When they knew that Lesavim was planning to kill the god Slayer, the evil dragons' eyes lit up. They agreed without hesitation. Lesavim could only smile apologetically, while secretly despising these evil dragons in his heart. All of you are idiots. Undoubtedly, there are many things to enjoy in this world. Why did you choose to do the most boring thing? As expected, evil dragons are a bunch of idiots. This vulgar and despicable guy didn't know that compared to the evil dragons, he was even more unsightly. Although the evil dragons were crazy, they had their own stubbornness. Lezivim didn't have that at all. In the eyes of others, the evil dragons were a bunch of lunatics. However, in the eyes of others, Lezivim was a despicable villain. Comparing the two, there was no doubt that a lunatic with stubbornness was of a higher level than a villain with no bottom line. Only Euclid didn't care about this and followed Lezivim wholeheartedly. That was because Euclid's family was supposed to support Lucifer, the demon king. Euclid took this as his own belief. No matter how despicable Lezivim was, as long as the blood of Lucifer flowed in his body, he would follow. There was no doubt that this was blind. Coupled with the evil dragon army that had been modified and lost all sense of reason, the current Calamity Group was basically a twisted organization. A deformed organization that combined despicability, blindness, and madness. And in this deformed organization, Lezivim was the leader. Evil dragon lords, our goal this time is to get close to the Godslayer. As for the other mythical forces, we can slowly deal with them later. Lezivim raised his eyebrows at Aziz Dahaka and Layden. So, in order to not let those gods, Buddhas, and demons disturb our mood, I'll have to trouble Aziz Dahaka and Layden to use a spell to cut off communication and a barrier to block teleportation? But my barrier isn't strong enough to cover this world, Layden said in a low voice. Your Highness, is there any way for my barrier to cover the entire world? Don't worry, Lezivim said proudly. I've already selected a few hundred evil dragons and transformed them into the same type as Layden. When the time comes, they will assist Layden. Even if it can't cover the entire world, it will still prevent those mythical forces from entering the human world. Is that so? Layden nodded indifferently. Then there's no problem. Aziz Dahaka doesn't have a way. Lezivim spread out his hands helplessly. Magic and magic are equivalent to knowledge. A group of unintelligent evil dragons will never be able to use magic and magic, construct spells and rituals. It's almost impossible to create an evil dragon similar to Azrael Dahakajan. I don't need any fake evil dragons. Aziz Dahaka snorted. It's just a spell to cut off communication. I alone am enough. 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 Aziz Dahaka's other two heads echoed as if they were performing a crosstalk. It looked a little funny, but in fact it gave people a creepy feeling. Very good. Lezivim smiled cheerfully. Then let's start attacking the cute humans. However, just as he finished speaking, a strange phenomenon occurred. Clang! With a flash of light, a huge teleportation magic array suddenly formed on the sea surface and in midair. In an instant it covered the entire evil dragon army. The smile on Lezivim's face froze. Chapter 1951. Clang! Under the dazzling light, teleportation magic circles appeared one after another in front of Lezivim, Euclid, and the rest of the evil dragons. They filled every single space around them. Immediately after, countless people started pouring out from the teleportation magic circles. Among the people there were angels, demons, fallen angels, and all kinds of Shura gods and Buddhas. Even vampires were among them. In other words, almost all the alien races that were different from humans were here. What? Lezivim was shocked. How can this be? Euclid was stunned as well. Even the legendary evil dragons were completely stunned. They did not understand why the people from the various mythical organizations would appear here. How is it? Lyran. Arthashel stepped forward, and the 12 black wings on his back spread out. His gaze was like an arrow that shot towards Lezivim. Do you like the surprise we gave you? As soon as Arthashel finished speaking, the Shura gods and Buddhas from the various mythical organizations that surrounded the entire evil dragon army started emitting terrifying auras. Roar, roar, roar. Perhaps because they felt threatened, the evil dragons in the evil dragon army started roaring violently as if they were trying to intimidate. The deafening dragon roars resounded throughout the sky above the ocean, and a dangerous atmosphere started spreading in the surroundings. The legendary evil dragons who had regained their senses looked at the Azura gods and Buddhas of the various mythical organizations surrounding them and started laughing. Ha 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 ha. So many powerful guys are here. That's great. Glendale. With so much delicious food, I can finally have a full meal today. Nidhogg. I didn't expect to be defeated here. Radon. Isn't this interesting? Azidahaka. Interesting. Apophis. For these legendary evil dragons who were eager to fight, this situation did not scare them. Instead, they became excited. Roar, roar, roar. The mass-produced evil dragons also seemed to have been affected by their original form. Their roars became even more violent, and the murderous intent in their eyes almost reached its peak. The dragon wings on their backs flapped as they became restless. Unfortunately, Lezawim wasn't in such a good mood. Don't move. Both of you are passive. Lezavim roared, glaring angrily at Ace Ashurs. Damn it. Why are you guys here? Is there a need to ask this question? Asashel mocked. Of course it's because your little trick has been seen through, Lylin. As expected, it's just as Noah said. You're just a mediocre character. You don't deserve the title of Son of the Demon King. Lezawim clenched his fists, his face full of anger. He was shocked because his actions and thoughts had been completely seen through. He was angry because of Asashel's sarcastic and contemptuous words. At this moment, a crimson figure and a resplendent figure appeared at the same time beside Asashel. Looking at the two people, Lezawim opened his eyes wide. Syzax. Michael. Long time no see, Lezawim. Syzax looked at Lezawim condescendingly with an unusually calm expression. I never thought that we would meet again in such a manner. You must pay for what you've done. Michael's face was completely indifferent, and his eyes were full of coldness as he looked at Lezawim. The debt between the heavens and the underworld shall be settled once and for all. Settled? Do you think you can defeat me like this? Let me tell you. Dream on. Lezawim was so angry that he laughed. Indeed, I didn't expect you to see through my actions, but so what? I have the evil dragon army that can challenge all the mythical factions. Plus, with the Holy Grail's transformation, you can't stop me. It's not up to you whether we can stop you or not. Asashel condensed a spear of light in his hand and pointed it at Lezawim. Don't even think about leaving here today. Just as Asashel finished speaking, Syzax and Michael ordered at the same time. Go. In the overwhelming crowd that surrounded the evil dragon army, terrifying auras exploded one after another. Oh! Demons, angels, fallen angels, vampires, Shura gods, and Buddhas burst out with shocking roars, carrying an aura that humans could not possess as they rushed out like a storm. Almost at the same time, Lezawim gave the same order. Kill. It was a simple word, but it made the evil dragons behind him go berserk. Roar, 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 roar. The densely packed evil dragon army roared together, shaking the air. The evil and ominous aura on their bodies skyrocketed, and with an incomprehensible madness, they charged forward without showing any signs of weakness. On one side was the mythical faction formed by various mythical factions. On the other side was the evil dragon faction formed by densely packed evil dragons. The creatures from the two factions were like two monstrous waves that crashed into each other. Kaboom! For a moment, the entire world rumbled, causing the ocean below to fluctuate violently. On the other hand, the people from the Myth faction and the Evil Dragon faction engaged in the most intense battle, turning the entire area into a battlefield. The mythical faction included demons, angels, fallen angels, vampires, and even various Shura gods and Buddhas. They gathered almost all the otherworldly races from all over the world. These otherworldly races all had their own mysteries. Demons used magic power. Angels and fallen angels used light power. Vampires used the power of mist and darkness. All sorts of Shura gods and Buddhas also burst out with shocking power, and engaged in the most intense battle with the Evil Dragon faction. Compared to the mythical faction, the Evil Dragon faction also had many tricks up their sleeves. Although they were all mass-produced evil dragons transformed from the Holy Grail, after a period of research, Lezawim had already used the Holy Grail to create 3 replicas of the legendary dragons: Glendale, Radon, and Nidhogg. Although these replicas were not as powerful as the original and had the power of a Dragon King, Demon King, their own performance and abilities were definitely comparable to superior demons, and were even stronger than the younger generation like Lyeth and Canna. As a result, the Evil Dragon faction actually managed to hold off the Myth faction for a while. Both sides fought back and forth, causing waves of blood, severed limbs, and even corpses to fall from the sky and sink into the sea. The sea was gradually dyed red. The bloody stench that even normal people could smell made the blood of the legendary level evil dragons boil. Good. Good. Let's fight. Let's fight. Glendale. Even if they're corpses, they're not fresh, but they're all my food, my food. Nidhogg. How many years has it been since I was this excited? Radon. Aren't you quite capable? Azdahaka. It's been a long time since I've seen you and I can't wait. Apophis. The evil dragon's heartless words almost infuriated Lezavim. Why are they still making sarcastic remarks at a time like this? Bastards. Lezavim's eyes turned red. If that's the case, I'll play with you until the end. However, Lezavim's words attracted a few voices. It will be dangerous if you guys are allowed to cause trouble on the battlefield. Therefore, you should go find your opponents. Following that sentence, four figures appeared around Lezavim, Euclid, and the legendary level evil dragons. Syzax, Achuka, Seraphil, Felubium. They were the four demon kings. Without giving Lezavim and the others any time to react, the four demon kings unleashed their mana. In the next moment, a magic circle suddenly appeared under Lezavim and the others, releasing a blinding light. Oh. Lezavim, Euclid, and the other legendary evil dragons were all shocked. They were shrouded by the blinding light and gradually disappeared on the spot. Only the dense evil dragon army was left, madly attacking the mythical factions. Chapter 1952. When he finally reacted, Euclid discovered that he had actually arrived at a prairie. Looking around, Euclid's brows furrowed as he subconsciously muttered to himself. This is... Just as this murmur sounded, a stern voice rang out. This is one of the 5 alternate dimensions jointly constructed by various mythical organizations. When this voice entered Euclid's ears, his calm expression instantly changed. Because to Euclid, although he had not heard this voice for a long time, it was very familiar. It was so familiar that it penetrated his soul. Hearing this voice, Euclid's lips trembled uncontrollably. He slowly turned his head and looked at the source of the voice. There was a tall woman with silver hair that was almost identical to Euclid's, braided into 3 tails. She was also wearing a knight's battle armor. Looking at the tall woman, Euclid's eyes trembled violently. He believed that as long as she was an evil demon, he would definitely recognize her. Eulephia Lucifergus, one of the most powerful female evil demons in the underworld. A member of Lucifer's family, the current evil king Lucifer's wife. The existence known as the most powerful queen. Every title made it impossible for evil demons not to recognize this tall woman. Now this tall woman did not follow her master, the current Lucifer Syzax, to fight against the evil dragon army. Instead, she stayed in this alternate dimension, waiting for Euclid's arrival. Looking at Euclid's trembling eyes, Eulephia's stern and serious face revealed a complicated and sorrowful expression. Euclid, you're still alive. Hearing this, Euclid subconsciously opened his mouth. Sister. That's right. Sister. Eulephia was Euclid's sister. Blood-related sister. When I heard from Lord Noah, I didn't really believe it. After all, back then it was indeed unknown whether you were alive or dead. Even I thought you had died. The complicated and sorrowful expression on Eulephia's face became even more intense. Who would have thought that not only did you survive, you even joined the group of disasters and became a terrorist, aiding the tyrant. Back then, the old Demon King faction fought with the current Demon King faction. In the end, the current Demon King faction won. Syzax, Achuka, Seraphil and Felubium became the new Demon Kings. The stubborn old Demon King faction was driven to the edge of the underworld. As a member of the old Demon King's faction, Eulephia fell in love with Syzax on the battlefield. In the end, she wasn't banished to the edge of the underworld, but instead became Syzax's consort and the new Demon King's wife. As for Eulephia's younger brother Euclid, no one knew whether he was dead or alive after the war, and his whereabouts were unknown. As time passed, even Eulephia believed that her little brother was dead. However, if a third party were to look at them now, they would notice that Eulephia and Euclid did indeed look alike. Whether it was that head of silver hair or that face, it was very similar. There was no doubt that these two were brother and sister. It was because of this that Noah felt that he had seen Euclid somewhere before. It was only when he saw Eulifia again that Noah confirmed this. In addition, when they first met, Euclid had also introduced himself in the same way. I am Euclid Lucifergus. Lucifergus. The demon clan that once supported the old demon king Lucifergus was also Eulifia's family. Euclid and Eulifia shared the same surname and looked very similar. How could this not arouse Noah's suspicion? Later on, Noah also mentioned Euclid's existence in front of Syzax and Eulifia, causing Syzax's expression to change. Eulifia, on the other hand, was at a loss for what to do. Thus this meeting took place. Answer me, Euclid. Eulifia's expression became very tense. Why did you join the group of disasters? Why? Euclid's expression returned to normal, and he laughed mockingly. Sister, do you really not know why I joined the group of disasters? Because of Lucifergus. Eulifia stared at Euclid. Because you are a descendant of the family that must support the demon king Lucifergus? Perhaps that's part of the reason. Euclid smiled non-committally. But since you can abandon the name of Lucifergus and live your life, I have the right to live the life I want, right? Is that so? Eulifia closed her eyes. Becoming a terrorist and bringing disaster to the world. Is that the life you want? Euclid looked at Eulifia and said, the life I want is one that is compatible with the life of a demon. Lord Lezavim has everything about the demon that I seek. That's why I follow him. I understand. Eulifia opened her eyes, and fiery magic slowly rose from her body. Since that's the case, I will also treat you as a true sinner and take you down. You're still as strict as before. No matter what I do wrong, you won't show favoritism. But that's how you should be, sister. Euclid's eyes glowed with a heat that had never been there before, and his body surged with mana that did not lose out to Eulifia at all. However, if you want to teach me a lesson, it won't be as easy as before. Sister, I'm also a demon with the same blood as you. Since you can become a demon king, I can naturally do the same. Now I won't lose to you. Eulifia didn't say anything else. She looked at Euclid without any emotion, only sternness. Since she found out that her brother was still alive, she couldn't let him walk down the wrong path. It was with this belief that Eulifia came here. I won't show mercy. At the same time, in another alternate dimension, the black-clothed Apahis was looking at the person standing in front of him, his face full of surprise. He couldn't help but be surprised. This was because the person standing in front of Apahis was no stranger to him. He was wearing the same black clothes as Apophis. He had the same human form as Apophis. He had the same evil aura as Apophis. Only his eyes, one gold and one black, were completely different from Apophis's eyes that seemed to have condensed all the darkness in them. It was Crown Kuvok. Apophis was truly shocked to see this man who was also known as one of the strongest evil dragons, just like himself. It's you. It's me. Crown Kuvok nodded, his gaze never leaving Apophis. I lost to the Red Dragon Emperor, so I agreed to help him fight against you. I see. Apophis understood almost immediately. You sent us, who are the main forces, to different spaces, and use forces of equal strength to defeat us one by one, or at least delay us. The rest of the forces will be gathered together to deal with the evil dragon army. You'll also be able to separate Lezavim, who has the Holy Grail, from us and prevent us from reviving. Is this your plan? I don't know. Crown Kuvok said straightforwardly. I'm just following the Red Dragon Emperor's orders and waiting for my opponent here. Oh. Apophis smiled. So you're saying that you want to fight me? That's right. Crown Kuvok smiled. Are you afraid? Afraid. Apophis smiled even more happily. It would be great if evil dragons knew what fear is. The gazes of the two most powerful evil dragons met in midair, and intense sparks were ignited. In the next instant, a similarly dense pitch-black draconic force erupted from Apophis and Kuvaka's bodies. Roar, 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 roar. Two dragon roars rang out, and two giant dragons with the same black luster appeared in this space. The only difference was their appearance. Crown Kuvok was a typical Western giant dragon. Apophis, on the other hand, was in the form of a dragon snake like an Eastern dragon. Roar, 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 roar. The two completely different evil dragons with the same powerful aura roared at the sky, and the sound waves shook the air. Then the two sides suddenly moved and collided violently. Chapter 1953. While the battle was going on in the two different spaces, in another different space, a fierce battle was already in full swing. Buzz! In the humming sound of the atmosphere, a huge magic array unfolded in the sky and instantly expanded to a range of more than a dozen meters. In the huge magic array, bolts of lightning formed by magic power fell like raindrops, directly shrouding the ground. There, Lezivim's face was gloomy as he looked at the lightning bolts falling from the sky. He didn't even try to dodge or defend himself, he just raised his hand towards the sky. An inexplicable fluctuation reverberated from Lezivim's raised hand. Like a protective shield, it protected Lezivim within. The numerous lightning bolts that descended from the sky came into contact with the ripple that could not be seen with the naked eye. Immediately, they slowly disappeared into the air, not leaving behind even the slightest trace. Lezivim's face didn't look any better after easily dissolving the surging magic power attack. He was still extremely gloomy. Lezivim raised his eyes and looked at the sky. He saw the figure almost immediately. The figure was wearing a pure white comet-like armor, and had a pair of blue light wings on his back. He looked like a small white dragon. "Yo, little Wally." Lezivim's face was gloomy, but his tone was extremely nasty. "My grandson, we haven't seen each other for so long. Is this how you greet your grandpa?" Lezivim. Wally's tone was full of anger and indifference. "I finally got the chance to destroy you." "Destroy me?" Lezivim grinned, raised a finger, and shook it arrogantly and contemptuously. "No, Wally, you should know that, right? You can't defeat me with your words. Whether I can do it or not, it's not with words but with actions," Wally said in an unprecedentedly cold tone. "Don't worry, I will kill you before the others defeat the evil dragon." Wally's words poked at Lezivim's sore spot. After being teleported to another dimension, Lezivim realized that he was in trouble. Using the power of the Holy Grail, Lezivim had indeed resurrected legendary evil dragons, and even transformed them into mass-produced evil dragons, forming an army that could threaten all mythical forces. However, Lezivim knew that this threat was only on the surface. That was because, other than the legendary evil dragons, the mass-produced evil dragons were all irrational and only had crazy battle instincts. Under such circumstances, even if their strength was equal, one side was a resourceful army, and the other side was a group of dragons that were worse than beasts. It was obvious who would win and who would win. Although the legendary-level evil dragons weren't completely irrational, they were all idiots with inexplicable stubbornness. They wouldn't listen to orders at all, so it wasn't strange for them to be defeated at any time. That was why the true terror of the evil dragon army was that they had the Holy Grail as their backup. They could continuously revive. Even if they were defeated, they could be resurrected to continue fighting. That was the terrifying part of the evil dragon army. As long as they had this advantage, even if the evil dragons were all irrational beasts, they could still be a terrifying threat. However, what Lezivim understood was also understood by others. For this, the allied forces of various mythical forces had already planned. Even if they couldn't take the Holy Grail away, they had to teleport Lezivim and Euclid, who might be in possession of the Holy Grail, into another dimension to isolate them and eliminate the threat of the Holy Grail. As for the evil dragons, those dangerous and crazy fellows, if they were left on the battlefield, the possibility of accidents happening was too high. It should be known that when the demons, angels, and fallen angels were fighting, it was the two heavenly dragons that caused havoc on the battlefield. In the end, the three forces had to stop the war and deal with the two heavenly dragons first. Currently, in the evil dragon camp, Glendale, Radon, and Nidhogg were all Dragon King-level existences. Apophis and Az-Dahaka were only second to the heavenly dragons. In addition, the evil dragons were dangerous and uncontrollable. If they were left on the battlefield and caused trouble, there was no telling what would happen. Therefore, the various mythical forces had already decided to lock Lezivim, Euclid, and the legendary evil dragons into another dimension. Then they would select the elites to deal with them one by one. At the very least, they had to stall for time. Then the various mythical forces would gather their forces and annihilate the evil dragon army without any support. Just like what Apophis said, this was the plan of the allied forces of the mythical forces, using the 5 dimensions to separate all of you and destroy you one by one. This is our battle plan. Wally looked down at Lezivim. And you are my prey. Prey? Lezivim was furious. You actually think of me as your prey? That's right. You can't even be considered an opponent. No, it should be said that you are not qualified to be an opponent for me to enjoy fighting. You are just a prey that I want to kill. Wally said coldly. Lezivim, you don't deserve to be called the son of the Demon King, and you don't deserve to have the name of Lucifer. You are just a vulgar and despicable person. I will kill you and live on with the glory of Lucifer. Glory my ass. Lezivim snorted, but his tone was also filled with rage. My cute grandson, let me remind you of the consequences of going against your grandfather. With that, 12 demonic wings suddenly spread out behind Lezivim's back. His body also surged with magic power. The strength of his magic power easily surpassed that of Wally, who was in a forbidden state. And it was far more than that. That was not strange. Wally in his forbidden state was at most at the Demon King level. In terms of Boxting's level, he was at the top of the 5 digits. Although Lezivim was much weaker than Syzax and Achuka, he was still a surpasser who was famous for being an alien existence that transcended races. His strength had long surpassed the Demon King level, exceeding the top of the 5 digits, and reaching the bottom of the 4 digits. In terms of strength alone, the difference between the bottom of the 4 digits and the top of the 5 digits was 5 times. In other words, in terms of strength alone, Lezivim was at least 5 times stronger than Wally. It was natural for him to far surpass Wally in his forbidden state. Not to mention, Lezivim had the ability to nullify artifacts. Coupled with this ability, the gap between Wally and Lezivim was too terrifying. There was no way to win. In response, Wally just chanted in a ruthless tone. I awaken. Let the absolute law fall to the White Dragon Emperor of Darkness. Let the infinite destruction penetrate the dream of dawn, to the tyranny. I become the Emperor of the Immaculate Dragon. Lead thee to the pinnacle of the silver fantasy and the demonic path. A dazzling flash bloomed on Wally's body. Silver Juggernaut Overdrive. At this moment, Wally's aura suddenly skyrocketed to an astonishing level, instantly surpassing Lezivim's. Lezivim's eyes widened. When the dazzling light dimmed, Wally, who had transformed into the Juggernaut Overdrive, with silver armor and terrifying power fluctuations all over his body, appeared in Lezivim's eyes. Lezivim. Wally seemed to want to vent all the anger and resentment in his heart as he growled. You will become history here. Oh, they're fighting. They're fighting. They're fighting. In another alternate space, Az Dahaka, who had been teleported in, immediately used the projection spell as he watched the fierce battle between Wally and Lezivim. His tone was extremely happy. Being teleported into an alternate space might be troublesome for Lezivim, Euclid, and the other evil dragons, but for Az Dahaka, who had mastered thousands of spells and was astonishingly accomplished in magic, it was not worth mentioning at all. However, Az Dahaka did not deactivate the alternate space spell, and used the teleportation spell to leave. Instead, he watched the show with relish. As a descendant of the Demon King Lucifer, compared to that third-rate trash Lezivim, the White Dragon Emperor seems to be more to my taste. I really want to fight the White Dragon Emperor. I really want to fight Lucifer. The 3 heads stared at the image in the projection, as if they were conversing with each other, speaking to each other. However, not long after Az Dahaka put away the spell, all 3 of his heads turned in one direction and laughed out loud. But compared to the White Dragon Emperor, I'd rather fight with you. I've really hit the jackpot, ha ha ha. While Az Dahaka was laughing, a figure slowly walked over. Looking at the laughing 3-headed evil dragon, the figure of the ancient Demon King who called himself the Absolute Evil gradually became clearer in his mind. Noah walked forward step by step as he watched the approaching 3-headed evil dragon. A terrifying look flashed in his dark eyes. Let me see if you can be like the Demon King I once saw, and show the courage to subdue the heavens and earth. Chapter 1954. In the chaotic space, the 3 heads of the 3-headed evil dragon were all staring in the same direction. Their red jade-like eyes flickered with a scorching and joyful radiance, making it very clear what they were feeling. Az Dahaka, who was in a great mood, looked at Noah who was slowly walking over, and all 3 heads laughed. So my opponent is the God Slayer? That's great. But I didn't think that I would be able to draw it. Listening to Az Dahaka's 3 heads' playful words, Noah stopped and said faintly, "After all, you are the only one who won't be trapped in this alternate space. With your magical attainments, it would only take an instant for you to come up with a spell to escape from this alternate space. For this reason, I naturally had to prepare a foolproof opponent to deal with you." With that, Noah changed the topic. "However, even without this factor, I still want to deal with you alone." "Oh." Azidahaka grinned. "You want to fight me too? I want to ask you a question." Noah looked at Azidahaka and asked, Why are you evil?" Everyone suddenly fell silent. Azidahaka's mischievous smile froze for a moment before it returned to normal. All three heads spoke at the same time. "And here I thought you were going to ask me a question. It's a little boring. Do you want me to answer you?" Noah ignored Azidahaka's playful laughter and cast his gaze directly on him. Under such circumstances, Azidahaka's smile did not diminish, but his tone became indifferent. Then Azidahaka said this. "If that's the case, then let me ask you. In your opinion, what exactly is evil?" "I don't know." Noah's answer was very straightforward. "I have seen too many evil people, but their evil is different." Is there really an answer to this question? What? Don't you know it very well? Azidahaka pursed his lips. "But I want to tell you that in your opinion what you have seen before is evil, but in the eyes of others it might not be so." "What?" Noah was slightly taken aback. "You see, doesn't everyone have their own standards of value?" Azidahaka spoke with assurance. "Children think that people who steal their toys are evil. Adults think that people who steal their money are evil. Men think that women who are shrewish are evil. Women think that men who cheat are evil. The so-called evil is simply something that other people put on them. If you say it yourself, is there any meaning? If I tell you now that I'm actually a good person, you won't believe me, right?" Azidahaka snorted. Azidahaka says, "I am an evil person, but I don't care. I just want to fight with powerful people. If it can satisfy me, that is enough." Azidahaka said this from the bottom of his heart. If this is the so-called evil, then I am evil. Azidahaka's other two heads also spoke. "Anyway, this is an evil dragon. An evil dragon should be evil." Azidahaka's words caused Noah's gaze to change as he looked at the evil dragon, and he fell silent. Ever since he knew that Azidahaka had revived and become an enemy as a member of the disaster squad, Noah had been comparing him to absolute evil in the box. It couldn't be helped. In the box, the mystic dragon that transcended myths and became the final human trial had left a very deep impression in Noah's heart. Until now, Noah had encountered many opponents. Some of these opponents had been taught a lesson, some had been killed directly, some had been forgotten in the blink of an eye, and some had been left in his memory. It could be said that there were all kinds of opponents. Among these opponents, if there was one that Noah respected the most, it would undoubtedly be Azidahaka. Ever since the mystic dragon became the final human trial, he had been wreaking havoc in the box. Not only did he have a 3-digit level of strength, but he also had a simulated star atlas, another cosmology, that exceeded the box by more than 3 digits. He had killed more than 1,000,000 gods, causing the box to fall into an abyss of suffering. Frankly speaking, the mystic dragon's actions could be said to be the type that Noah hated the most. He did not care about the target, the individual, or time and space. This evil god that originated from the sect of fire unleashed the same horror, despair, doomsday, and destruction on everything. He destroyed everything in sight, regardless of whether it was people, things, or objects. Who knew how many innocent lives he had killed? To Noah, who had always believed that the innocent should not be harmed, and who believed that life was precious, this was definitely an existence that could not be tolerated. Therefore, Noah did not hesitate to challenge him, and even more so, did not hesitate to kill him. Even though he was covered in wounds, he still pierced through his body and dug out his heart. When he did this, there was no mercy or sympathy to speak of. Even if Azidahaka was resurrected again, Noah would definitely kill him. However, Noah had a very deep respect for this absolutely intolerable existence. This was because Noah did not forget that Azidahaka had done evil in order to give humans a glimmer of hope. He had transcended the myth and become the final human trial. In the end, humans would definitely walk towards doomsday. This was a fact that could not be changed. There was nothing that could remain the same forever. Humans were not the masters of Earth from the beginning. Instead, they gradually prospered through the long history of evolution and became the overlords of the land. However, who could be sure that humans could continue to survive? No one could. Perhaps one day humans would walk towards extinction due to an unknown disaster and give up their position as the overlord of the land. Humans' final trial was born because of this. Materializing the elements that would destroy humans was the final human trial. Azidahaka had injected the elements that would lead humans to extinction due to their evil intentions into his body, and even into his soul, becoming the Demon King. This was all for the sake of leaving humans with a glimmer of hope. As long as this Demon King could be defeated, the elements that would destroy humans would disappear, and the future of humans would be guaranteed. Azidahaka had done evil because of this. Therefore, Azidahaka would not compromise with humans. Only by doing his best to defeat him would humans have a glimmer of hope. Therefore, even if Azidahaka's actions were unforgivable and deserved death, it was believed that everyone who knew the reason would still have the purest respect for him. This included the rebellious 16 knights. With such an example, how could Noah not compare this world's Azidahaka to him? However, it was only at this moment that Noah understood. Azidahaka was Azidahaka. Azidahaka was Azidahaka. Although the two came from the same source, they were still different. One did evil in order to leave humans with a glimmer of hope, and used evil to show kindness. The other did what he wanted. It was pure and simple, and was not hypocritical or pretentious. It knew its place and was not afraid of battle. The so-called evil was just something that others put on it. Although they were different, the evil in both of them was the type that others could not hate. It's just that Azidahaka. Noah looked up at the three-headed evil dragon. Your evil is really too small. That's right. Although he was not the type that others hated, compared to the Demon King that could conquer the world, the evil of this world's Azidahaka was still too small. Although your evil is stubborn, it doesn't have faith. Noah looked directly at the three-headed evil dragon. I've seen evil that even if all the gods and Buddhas descended from the heavens, they would still have to admire. It's a pity that my evil doesn't need others to acknowledge it. Azidahaka grinned. It doesn't matter if you want to deny it, hate it, or even despise it. I just want to fight with someone stronger. It doesn't matter who it is. As for whether it's good or evil, that's up to others to decide.